Section 7 of the Natural History, Volume 6. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Maria James, The Natural History, Volume 6 by Pliny the Elder. Translated by John Bostock and Henry Thomas Riley. Section 7, Book 27, Chapters 57 to 92. Chapter 57. Galeopsis, Galeodolin, or Galeon. 6 remedies. Galeopsis, or as some call it, Galeobdolin, or Galeon, is a plant with a stem and leaves like those of the nettle, only smaller, and which, when bruised, emit a powerful smell. The flower is purple, and the plant is found growing everywhere, about hedges and footpaths. The leaves and stems, bruised in vinegar and applied topically, are curative of indurations, carcinomata, and scrofulous sores. They disperse also inflammatory tumors, imposthumes of the parotid glands, and it is found a useful plan to foment the parts affected with a decoction of them. Applied with salt, this plant is curative of putrid ulcers and gangrenous sores. Chapter 58. The Glox, 1 remedy. The Glox was known in ancient times as the Eugalaton. In the leaves it resembles the cytisus and the lentil, only that they are whiter beneath. The branches, 5 or 6 in number, are extremely thin and, springing from the root, creep upon the ground with small purple blossoms upon them. This plant is found in localities near the sea. It is boiled in a pottage made of simulago to increase the milk. Females, however, after taking it, must immediately use the bath. Chapter 59. Glossian, 3 remedies. Diaglossia, 2 remedies. Glossian grows in Syria and Parthia. It is a plant of stunted growth and thickly covered with leaves, like those of the poppy in appearance, only smaller and of a more repulsive aspect. It has an offensive smell and a bitter astringent taste. The seed, which is of a saffron color, is put into a vessel coated with potter's clay and heated in an oven. When taken out, a juice is extracted which is known by the same name as the plant. This juice and the leaves, bruised, are used for defluxions of the eyes, which disappear in an instant. Under this treatment, an eye salve, too, is prepared from the juice, known as diaglossia to medical men. The milk, when the secretion of it is stopped, is restored by the agency of this plant, for which purpose it is taken in water. Chapter 60. The Glycisid, Paeonia, or Pentoribus, 20 remedies. The Glycisid, by some called Paeonia or Pentoribus, has a stem 2 cubits in length, accompanied by 2 or 3 others, and of a reddish color, with a bark like that of the laurel. The leaves are similar to those of Isatis, but more unctuous, rounder, and more diminutive. The seed is enclosed in capsules, some being red and some black, there being 2 varieties of the plant. The female plant is generally thought to be the one to the root of which some 6 or 8 bulbs are attached, of an elongated form, those of the male plant being more in number, as it throws out more roots than one, a palm in length, and of a white color. It has also an astringent taste. The leaves of the female plant smell like myrrh and lie closer together than those of the male. Both plants grow in the woods, and they should always be taken up at night, it is said, as it would be dangerous to do so in the daytime, the woodpecker of Mars being sure to attack the eyes of the person so engaged. It is stated also that the person, while taking up the root, runs great risk of being attacked with proceedings of the anus. All this, however, I take to be so much fiction, most frivolously invented to puff off their supposed marvelous properties. Both plants are used for various purposes. The red seed, taken in red wine, about 15 in number, rest menstruation, while the black seed, taken in the same proportion, in either raisin or other wine, are curative of diseases of the uterus. The root, taken in wine, allays all kinds of pains in the bowels, and acts as a purgative. It cures opisthotomy also, jaundice, nephritic diseases, and afflictions of the bladder. Boiled in wine, it is used for diseases of the trachea and stomach, and acts astringently upon the bowels. It is eaten also by beasts of burden, but when wanted for remedial purposes 4 drachmae are sufficient. The black seed is useful as a preventative of nightmare, being taken in wine in number above stated. It is very good, too, to eat this seed, and to apply it externally for gnawing pains of the stomach. Suppurations are also dispersed when recent with the black seed, and when of long standing with the red. Both kinds are very useful, too, for wounds inflicted by serpents, and in cases where children are troubled by calculi, being employed at the crisis when strangury first makes its appearance. Chapter 61. Nemphalium, or Chamazelon. 6 remedies. Nemphalium is called Chamazelon by some. Its white, soft leaves are used as flock, and indeed there is no perceptible difference. This plant is administered in astringent wine for dysentery. It arrests looseness of the bowels and the catamenia, and is used as an injection for tenesmus. It is employed topically for putrid sores. Chapter 62. The Galidraga. 1 remedy. Xenocrates gives the name of Galidraga to a plant which resembles the leucocanthus and grows in the marshes. It is a prickly plant with a tall, ferruaceous stem, surmounted with a head somewhat similar to an egg in appearance. When this head is growing in summer, small worms, he says, are generated, which are put away in a box for keeping, and are attached as an amulet, with bread, to the arm on the side on which toothache is felt. Indeed, it is quite wonderful, he says, how soon the pain is removed. These worms, however, are of no use after the end of a year, or in cases where they have been allowed to touch the ground. Chapter 63. Holcus or Aristus. Holcus is a plant that grows in arid, stony spots. It has an ear at the end of a fine stem, and looks like barley that has put forth again when cut. Attached to the head or around the arm, it extracts spikes of corn adhering to the flesh, for which reason some persons give it the name of Aristus. Chapter 64. Hyoceras, 1 remedy. Hyoceras resembles endive in appearance, but is a smaller plant and rougher to the touch. Pounded and applied to wounds, it heals them with remarkable rapidity. Chapter 65. The Holosteon, 3 remedies. The Holosteon, so called by the Greeks by way of antiphrasis, in the same way that they give the name of sweet to the gall, is a plant destitute of all hardness, of such extreme fineness as to resemble hairs in appearance, 4 fingers in length, and very similar to hay grass. The leaves of it are narrow, and it has a rough flavor. It grows upon elevated spots composed of humus. Taken in wine, it is used for ruptures and convulsions. It has the property also of closing wounds. Indeed, if applied to pieces of meat, it will solder them together. Chapter 66. The Hypophaeston, right remedies. The hypophaeston is one of those prickly plants which fullers use in their coppers. It has neither stem nor flower, but only diminutive empty heads, numerous leaves of a grass-green color, and small soft white roots. From these roots a juice is extracted in summer, which, taken in doses of 3 oboli, acts as a purgative. being used for this purpose in cases of epilepsy, fits of trembling, dropsy, vertigo, hardness of breathing, and incipient paralysis. Chapter 67. 11. The Hypoglossa, one remedy. The Hypoglossa is a plant with leaves like those of the wild myrtle, of a concave form, prickly, and presenting another small leaf within, resembling a tongue in shape. A wreath made of these leaves, placed upon the head, alleviates headache. Chapter 68. Hypercoon. Hypercoon is a plant found growing in cornfields, with leaves like those of rue. Its properties are similar to those of juice of poppies. Chapter 69. The Idea herba, or plant of Ida. 4 remedies. The Idaean plant has leaves like those of the oxymyrcine, to which leaves a sort of tendril adheres that bears a flower. This plant arrests diarrhea, the catamenia when in excess, and all kinds of hemorrhage. It is of an astringent and repercussive nature. Chapter 70. The Isopyran, or phaseolin. 2 remedies. The Isopyran is called phaseolin by some, from the circumstance that the leaf of it, which resembles that of anise, assumes a spiral form like the tendrils of the phaseolus. At the summit of the stem it bears small heads full of a seed like that of malanthium. These heads, taken with honey or hydromel, are good for cough and other affections of the chest. They are extremely useful also for liver complaints. Chapter 71. The Lathyrus, 2 remedies. The lathyrus has numerous leaves like those of the lettuce, with numbers of small buds, in which the seed is contained, enclosed in envelopes like that of the caper. When these buds are dry, the seeds, about the size of a peppercorn, are taken out. They are white, sweet, and easily cleansed from the husk. 20 of them, taken in pure water or in hydromel, are curative of dropsy and carry off bile. Persons who require a stronger purgative take them with the husks on. They are apt, however, to be injurious to the stomach, for which reason a plan has been adopted of taking them with fish or else chicken broth. Chapter 72. The Leontoptalon, or pardalion. 2 remedies. The Leontoptalon is called pardalion by some. It has a leaf like that of the cabbage, and a stem half a foot in length, with numerous lateral branches, and a seed at the extremities of them, enclosed in pods like those of the chickpea. The root resembles that of rape, and is large and black. It grows in ploughlands. The root taken in wine neutralizes the venom of all kinds of serpents. Indeed, there is nothing known that is more speedily efficacious for that purpose. It is given also for sciatica. Chapter 73. The Galeopsis. 2 remedies. The Galeopsis has longer and thicker leaves than those of lettuce, and a long hairy stem, with numerous offshoots, a cubit in length. The flower is diminutive and of a purple color. It grows in champaign localities. In combination with barley meal, it is used as an application for erysipelas. The juice of it, mixed with warm water, is employed as a sudorific in fevers. Chapter 74. The Lythospermum, exanichon, diospyron, or Heracleos. 2 remedies. Among all the plants, however, there is none of a more marvelous nature than the Lythospermum, sometimes called exanichon, diospyron, or Heracleos. It is about 5 inches in height, with leaves twice the size of those of rue, and small ligneous branches about the thickness of a rush. It bears close to the leaves a sort of fine beard or spike, standing by itself, on the extremity of which there are small white stones as round as a pearl, about the size of a chickpea, and as hard as a pebble. These stones, at the part where they adhere to the stalk, have a small cavity and contain a seed within. This plant is found in Italy, no doubt, but that of Crete is the most esteemed. Among all the plants, there is none that I ever contemplated with greater admiration than this. So beauteous is the conformation that it might be fancied that the hand of an artist had arranged a row of lustrous pearls alternately among the leaves. So exquisite, too, the nicety in thus making a stone to grow upon a plant. The authorities say that this is a creeping plant, and that it lies upon the ground, but for my own part, I have only seen it when plucked, and not when growing. It is well known that these small stones, taken in doses of 1 drachma, in white wine, break and expel urinary calculi and are curative of strangury. Indeed, there is no plant that so instantaneously proclaims, at the mere sight of it, the medicinal purposes for which it was originally intended. The appearance of it, too, is such that it can be immediately recognized without the necessity of having recourse to any botanical authority. Chapter 75. Lapidus muscus, or stone moss, one remedy. There grows near running streams a dry white moss upon ordinary stones. One of these stones, with the addition of human saliva, is rubbed against another, after which the first stone is used for touching impetigo, the party so doing uttering these words: "Cantharides be gone, a wild wolf seeks your blood." Chapter 76. The Lymium, one remedy. Lymium is the name given by the Gauls to a plant, in a preparation of which, known to them as deer's poison, they dip their arrows when hunting. To 3 modi of salivating mixture, they put as much of the plant as is used for poisoning a single arrow, and a mess of it is passed down the throat. In cases where oxen are suffering from the disease, due care being taken to keep them fastened to the manger till they have been purged, as they are generally rendered frantic by the dose. In case perspiration supervenes, they are drenched all over with cold water. Chapter 77. The Luce, Mesoleucon or Lucus, 3 remedies. Luce, a plant resembling Mercurialis, has received its name from the circumstance that a white line runs through the middle of the leaf, for which reason also some give it the name of Mesoleucon. The juice of this plant is curative of fistula, and the plant itself, bruised, is good for carcinomata. It is probably the same plant as that called lucus, so remarkably efficacious for the venom of all kinds of marine animals. Authors have not given a description of it, beyond telling us that the wild lucus has larger leaves than the other, and has properties more strongly developed. They state also that the seed of the cultivated kind is the more acrid of the 2. Chapter 78. The Leucographus, 5 remedies. I have not found a description given by any writer of the Leucographus, a thing I am the more surprised at, as they tell us that it is good for the cure of spitting of blood, taken in doses of 3 oboli with saffron, as also that it is useful for celiac affections, applied beaten up in water, and in cases of excessive menstruation. They state also that it enters into the composition of ophthalmic preparations, and that it fills up ulcers on the more tender parts of the body with new flesh. Chapter 79. 12. The Median, 3 remedies. The median has leaves like those of the cultivated cereus, a stem 3 feet in length, and a large round purple flower at its extremity. The seed is diminutive and the root half a foot in length. It grows upon umbrageous sheltered rocks. The root, taken in doses of 2 drachma with honey, arrests the catamania, the electuary being used for some days. The seed, too, is administered in wine for a similar purpose. Chapter 80. The Myasota or Myosotis, 3 remedies. The Myasota or Myosotis is a smooth plant, throwing out from a single root numerous hollowed stems of a somewhat reddish color, and bearing at the lower extremities swarthy, narrow, oblong leaves, sharp on the back, arranged in pairs at regular distances, and springing from delicate branches attached with axils to the main stems. The flower is blue, and the root, a finger in length, is provided with numerous filaments like hairs. This plant possesses certain septic and ulcerating properties, and hence is used for the cure of fistula of the eye. The Egyptians say that if upon the morning of the 28th day of their month Thoth, a day which generally falls in our month of August, a person rubs himself with the juice of this plant before speaking to anyone, he will be sure to have no diseases of the eyes all that year. Chapter 81. The Myagrus, 1 remedy. The Myagrus is a ferulaceous plant with leaves like those of madder. The seed is of an oily nature. Indeed, an oil is extracted from it. Ulcerations of the mouth are cured by rubbing them with the juice of this plant. Chapter 82. The Nema, 1 remedy. The plant called Nema bears 3 long leaves like those of endive. Applied to scars, it restores the skin to its natural color. Chapter 83. The Natrix, 1 remedy. Natrix is the name of a plant, the root of which, when taken out of the ground, has just the rank smell of the he-goat. It is used in Picenum for the purpose of keeping away from females what, with a singular credulity, they call by the name of fatui. For my own part, however, I should think that persons requiring to be treated with such medicaments as these must be laboring under a sort of mental hallucination. Chapter 84. Odontitis, 1 remedy. Odontitis is a sort of hay grass which throws out from a single root numerous small jointed stems, of a triangular form and of a swarthy hue. At the joints there are small leaves, somewhat longer than those of the polygonis, and in the axils formed by these leaves is the seed, similar to barley in appearance. It has a purple diminutive flower, and is found growing in meadows. A handful of the stems, boiled in astringent wine, is used for the cure of toothache, the decoction being retained for some time in the mouth. Chapter 85. The Athana, 1 remedy. The Athana is a Syrian plant, resembling rocket in appearance. Its leaves are pierced with numerous holes, and its flower resembles that of saffron, for which reason some persons have given it the name of anemone. The juice of this plant is employed in ophthalmic preparations. It is slightly pungent, of a warming nature, and astringent as it dries. It acts as a detergent upon cicatrizations, films on the eyes, and all impediments of the sight. Some say that the plant is washed and dried, and then divided into lozenges. Chapter 86. The Anasma, 1 property. The anasma has leaves some 4 fingers in length, lying upon the ground, and indented like those of the anchusa. It has neither stem, blossom, nor seed. A pregnant woman, they say, if she eats of this plant, or even walks over it, will be sure to miscarry. Chapter 87. The Anopordin, 5 remedies. The anopordin, it is said, has strongly carminative effects upon asses when they eat of it. It acts as a diuretic and as an emmenagogue, arrests diarrhea, and disperses abscesses and suppurations. Chapter 88. The Osiris, 4 remedies. The Asirus bears small, swarthy, flexible branches covered with dark leaves like those of flax. The seed, which grows upon the branches, is black at first, but afterwards changes its color and turns red. Cosmetics for females are prepared from these branches. A decoction of the roots taken in drink is curative of jaundice. The roots, cut in pieces before the seed ripens and dried in the sun, act astringently upon the bowels. Gathered after the seed has ripened and boiled in pottage, they are curative of defluxions of the abdomen. They are taken also by themselves, bruised in rainwater. Chapter 89. The Oxys. 2 remedies. The oxys is a plant with 3 leaves. It is given for derangement of the stomach, and patients eat it who are suffering from intestinal hernia. Chapter 90. The polyanthemum or batrachion. 3 remedies. The polyanthemum, by some persons called batrachion, by virtue of its caustic properties, has an excoriating effect upon scars and restores the skin to its proper color. It heals white morphew also. Chapter 91. The polygonis, polygonatos, toothalis, carcinethron, clema, or myrtopetalos, otherwise known as sanguinaria or orios. 4 varieties of it, 40 remedies. The Greeks give the name of polygonos to the plant known to us as sanguinaria. It is but little elevated above the ground, has leaves like those of rue, and resembles grass in appearance. The juice of it, injected into the nostrils, arrests hemorrhage. Taken with wine, it has a similar effect upon bleeding at any other part of the body, as also spitting of blood. Those who distinguish several kinds of polygonus make this to be the male plant, and say that it is so called from the large number of seeds, or else from its numerous branches. Some call it polygonatos, from the number of its joints, others again toothalis, and others carcinethron, clema, or myrtopetalos. There are some authorities to be found, however, who say that this is the female plant, and that the male is more diminutive, less swarthy, and more jointed, with a seed protruding beneath all the leaves. However this may be, these plants are of an astringent, cooling nature. The seed is laxative, and, taken in large doses, acts as a diuretic, and arrests defluxions. Indeed, if there is no defluxion, it is of no use taking it. For burning heats of the stomach, the leaves are applied topically, and they are used in the form of a liniment for pains in the bladder, and for erysipelas. The juice is used as an injection for suppurations of the ears, and by itself for pains in the eyes. It is administered also in fevers, tertian and quartan fevers more particularly, in doses of 2 cyathi, just before the paroxysms come on, as also in cases of cholera, dysentery, and derangement of the stomach. There is a third kind which grows on the mountains, and is known as orias, similar to a delicate reed in appearance, and having but a single stem, with numerous joints running into one another. The leaves of it are similar to those of the pitch tree, and the root is never used. This variety, however, is not so efficacious as those already mentioned, and indeed is used exclusively for sciatica. A 4th kind is known as the wild polygonus. It is a shrub, almost a tree in fact, with a ligneous root, a red trunk like that of the cedar, and branches resembling those of spartum, a couple of palms in length, and with 3 or 4 dark-colored, knotted joints. This kind also is of an astringent nature, and has a flavor like that of the quince. It is either boiled down in water to 1/3, or else dried and powdered for sprinkling upon ulcerations of the mouth and excoriations. It is chewed also for affections of the gums. It arrests the progress of corrosive ulcers and of all sores of a serpiginous nature, or which cicatrice with difficulty, and is particularly useful for ulcerations caused by snow. Herbalists employ it also for quinsy, and use it as a chaplet for headache. For defluxions of the eyes, they put it around the neck. In cases of tertian fever, some persons pull it up with the left hand and attach it as an amulet to the body. The same, too, in cases of hemorrhage. There is no plant that is more generally kept by them in a dry state than the polygonis. End of section 7.
Section 8 of the Natural History, Volume 6. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Natural History, Volume 6 by Pliny the Elder, translated by John Bostock and Henry Thomas Riley. Section 8, Book 27, Chapters 93 to 120. Chapter 93, The Peplis, Syci, Meconion, or Mecon Aphrodis, 3 remedies. The Peplis, known by the various names of Syci, Meconion, and Mecon Aphrodis, is a shrub-like plant springing from a single diminutive root. The leaves of it resemble those of rue, but are a little larger. The seed which lies beneath the leaves is round and smaller than that of the white poppy. It is ordinarily gathered in vineyards at harvest time, and is dried with the seed on, receivers being placed beneath to catch it as it falls. This seed, taken in drink, purges the bowels, and carries off bile and pituitous secretions. 1 acetabulum, taken in 3 hemini of hydromel, is a middling dose. It is sprinkled also upon meat and other articles of food as a laxative medicine. Chapter 94, The Periclymenos, 5 remedies. The periclymenos is also a shrub-like plant with 2 whitish, soft leaves arranged at intervals. At the extremity among the leaves is the seed, hard and very difficult to pluck. It grows in plowed fields and hedges, entwining around every object from which it can gain support. The seed is dried in the shade, pounded, and divided into lozenges. These lozenges are left to dissolve in 3 kyathi of white wine for a period of 30 days, and are given for diseases of the spleen, the volume of which is gradually diminished either by discharges of bloody urine or else by alveine evacuation, the effects of the medicament being perceptible at the end of 10 days. The leaves boiled act as a diuretic and are useful for hardness of breathing. Taken in drink in manner above mentioned, they facilitate delivery and bring away the afterbirth. Chapter 95, Pelecanon, 1 remedy. We have already spoken of Pelecanon as growing in cornfields, a plant which throws out a number of shoots from thin stems, and has leaves like those of the chickpea. The seed, which is contained in pods of a curved shape, like diminutive horns, and 3 or 4 in number, is similar to gith in appearance, bitter, and an excellent stomachic. It is used as an ingredient in antidotes. Chapter 96, Polygala, 1 remedy. Polygala is a palm in height, with leaves like those of the lentil at the extremity of the stem. It has an astringent taste. Taken in drink, it increases the milk in nursing women. Chapter 97, Poterion, Phyrnion, or Neurus, 4 remedies. Poterion, or as some call it, Phyrnion, or Neurus, throws out numerous branches, is shriveled and prickly, and covered with a thick down. The leaves of it are small and round, the branch is long, soft, thin, and flexible, and the blossom elongated and of a grass-green color. The seed is never used, but it has a pungent flavor and a powerful smell. The plant is found growing upon moist, watery elevations. The roots are 2 or 3 in number, some 2 cubits in length, sinewy, white, and firm. It is dug up in autumn, and the stem yields a juice like gum when cut. The root is said to be of wonderful efficacy as an application for the cure of wounds, more particularly of the sinews, even when severed. A decoction of it is also taken with honey for relaxations of the sinews, or for weakness or wounds of those parts. Chapter 98. The phalangitis, phalangion, or leucacantha, 4 remedies. The phalangitis is by some called phalangion, and by others leucanthemum, or as I find it written in some copies, leucacantha. Its branches are diminutive, never less than 2 in number, and running in contrary directions. The blossom is white and similar to the flower of the red lily, the seed dark and broad, resembling the half of a lentil, but much thinner, and the root slender, and of a grass-green color. The leaves, blossoms, or seed of this plant are employed for the cure of wounds inflicted by scorpions, serpents, and the phalangium, and for the removal of griping pains in the bowels. Chapter 99. The phytuma, 1 property. As for the phytuma, I think it is a mere loss of time to describe it, it being only used as an ingredient in philters. Chapter 100. The phalan, 1 property. The Greeks give the name of phalan to a plant which grows among the rocks in mountainous spots. The female plant is of more grass-green color than the other, with a thin stem, a diminutive root, and a round seed like that of the poppy. This last kind ensures the conception of issue of the same sex, while the male plant, differing only in the seed, which resembles the olive at its first appearance, ensures the conception of male issue. They are both taken in wine. Chapter 101. The philandrion, 2 remedies. The philandrion grows in marshy spots and has a leaf like that of parsley. The seed of it is taken in drink for calculi and affections of the bladder. Chapter 102. The phalaris, 2 remedies. The phalaris has a long thin stem like a reed, with a drooping flower at the extremity. The seed is like that of sesame. This plant, too, taken with milk and honey, in wine or vinegar, breaks urinary calculi, and is curative of diseases of the bladder. Chapter 103. The polarizin, 5 remedies. The polarizin has leaves like those of myrtle, and numerous roots. These roots are pounded and administered in wine for injuries inflicted by serpents. They are useful also for cattle. Chapter 104. The proserpinaca, 5 remedies. The proserpinaca, a common plant enough, is an excellent remedy for the sting of the scorpion. Powdered and mixed with brine and oil, in which the mina has been preserved, it is an excellent cure, they say, for quinsy. It is also stated that however fatigued a person may be to the extent even of losing his voice, he will be sure to be refreshed by putting this plant beneath his tongue, and that if it is eaten, a vomit will be the result, productive of good effects. Chapter 105. Rachma, 36 remedies. Rachma is imported from the regions situate beyond Pontus. The root of it is similar to black costus, but smaller and somewhat redder, inodorous, and of a hot, astringent flavor. When pounded, it yields a color like that of wine, but inclining to saffron. Applied topically, it reduces abscesses and inflammations, and heals wounds. Used with raisin wine, it allays defluxions of the eyes, with honey, ecchymosis, and with vinegar, livid marks upon the skin. Reduced to powder, it is sprinkled upon malignant ulcers, and is given internally for spitting of blood in doses of 1 drachma in water. For dysentery and celiac affections, if unattended with fever, it is administered in wine, but if there is fever, in water. It is pounded more easily when it has been steeped in water the night before. A decoction of it is given in doses of 2 drachmae for ruptures, convulsions, contusions, and falls with violence. In cases of pains in the chest, a little pepper and myrrh is added. When the stomach is deranged, it is taken in cold water, and the same in cases of chronic cough, purulent expectorations, liver complaint, affections of the spleen, sciatica, diseases of the kidneys, asthma and hardness of breathing, pounded and taken in doses of 3 oboli in raisin wine, or used in the form of a decoction. It cures irritations of the trachea. Applied with vinegar, It acts as a detergent upon lichens. It is taken in drink also for flatulency, cold shiverings, chilly fevers, hiccup, gripings of the bowels, herpetic ulcerations, oppressions of the head, vertigo attended with melancholy, lassitude accompanied with pain and convulsions. Chapter 106. The Rosetta. 2 remedies. In the vicinity of Ariminum there is a well-known plant called Rosetta. It disperses abscesses and all kinds of inflammations. Those who employ it for these purposes add the following words: Rosetta, allay this disease. Knowest thou not what chick it is that has torn up these roots? Let it have nor head nor feet. This formula is repeated thrice, the party spitting on the ground each time. Chapter 107. The Sticus. 3 remedies. The sticus grows only in the islands of that name. It is an odoriferous plant, which leaves like those of hyssop and of a bitter taste. Taken in drink, it promotes menstruation and allays pains in the chest. It forms an ingredient also in antidotes. Chapter 108. The Solanum, by the Greeks called strychnon. 2 remedial properties. The solanum, according to Cornelius Celsus, is called strychnon by the Greeks. It is possessed of repercussive and refrigerative properties. Chapter 109. Smyrnion. 32 remedies. Sinon. 2 remedies. Smyrnion has a stem like that of parsley, but larger leaves, and growing principally about the young shoots, which are numerous. From the midst of these shoots the leaves make their appearance, unctuous and bending towards the ground. This plant has a medicinal smell, penetrating to a certain degree, and agreeable. The color of it is a pale yellow, and the stems bear rounded umbels like those of dill, with a round black seed, which dries at the beginning of summer. The root also is odoriferous, of an acrid pungent flavor, soft and juicy, black on the outer coat and pale within. The smell of it partakes very much of the nature of that of myrrh, to which in fact it owes its name. It grows in localities of a stony nature or covered with humus. Its medicinal properties are warming and resolvent. The leaves and root are used as a diuretic and as an emmenagogue. The seed arrests diarrhea, and the root applied topically disperses abscesses and suppurations, provided they are not inveterate, and reduces indurated tumors. It is useful also for injuries inflicted by the phalangium and by serpents taken in wine, with the addition of cacris, pallium, or melissophalum. The dose, however, must be taken a little at a time only, for otherwise it acts as an emetic, a reason for which it is sometimes administered with rue. The seed or root is curative of cough, hardness of breathing, and diseases of the thoracic organs, spleen, kidneys, and bladder. The root, too, is used for ruptures and convulsions. This plant facilitates delivery and brings away the afterbirth. It is also given in combination with crethmos in wine for sciatica. It acts as a sudorific and carminative, for which reason it is used to disperse flatulency of the stomach. It promotes also the cicatrization of wounds. A juice is extracted from the root, which is very useful for female complaints and for affections of the thoracic organs and viscera, possessing as it does certain calorific, digestive, and detergent properties. The seed in particular is given in drink for dropsy, external applications being made of the juice, and emollient poultices applied of the dried rind of the root. It is used also as a seasoning for food, boiled meat in particular, with the addition of honeyed wine, oil, and garum. Sinon, a plant with a flavor very like that of pepper, promotes the digestion and is highly efficacious for pains in the stomach. Chapter 110. Telotheon. 4 remedies. Telotheon resembles purslane in the stem and leaves. From the root of it there spring 7 or 8 small branches covered with thick fleshy leaves. It grows in cultivated spots and among vines in particular. It is used as an application for freckles, being removed as soon as dry. It is employed also for white morphew, being applied some 6 hours each night or day, and the treatment continued for about 3 months after removing it. Barley meal should be applied. Telotheon is healing also for wounds and fistulas. Chapter 111. Trichomanes. 5 remedies. The trichomanes is a plant that resembles the andiantum, except that it is more slender and of a darker color. The leaves of it, which are similar to those of the lentil, lie close together on opposite sides, and have a bitter taste. A decoction of this plant, taken in white wine, with the addition of wild cummin, is curative of strangury. Bruised and applied to the head, it prevents the hair from falling off, and where it has come off, restores it. Pounded and applied with oil, it effects the cure of allopathy. The mere taste of it is provocative of sneezing. Chapter 112. The philiptrum. One remedy. The philiptrum has leaves like those of coriander, only somewhat more unctuous, and a stem resembling that of the poppy. It is found growing everywhere, in Champagne localities more particularly. The leaves, applied with honey, heal ulcers. Chapter 113. Philaspe and persicon napi. 4 remedies. Of philaspe there are 2 kinds, the first of which has narrow leaves, about a finger in length and breadth, turned toward the ground and divided at the point. It has a slender stem, half a foot in length, and not wholly destitute of branches. The seed, enclosed in a crescent-shaped capsule, is similar to a lentil in shape, except that it has a jagged appearance, to which in fact it owes its name. The flower is white, and the plant is found near footpaths and in hedges. The seed, which has an acrid flavor, carries off bile and pituitous secretions by vomit and by alvine evacuation, the proper dose being 1 acetabulum. It is used also for sciatica in the form of an injection, this treatment being persevered in until it has induced a discharge of blood. It acts also as an emmenagogue, but is fatal to the fetus. The other philaspe, known by some as persicon napi, has broad leaves and large roots, and is also very useful as an injection for sciatica. Both plants are very serviceable for inguinal complaints, it being recommended that the person who gathers them should mention that he has taken them for diseases of the groin, for abscesses of all kinds, and for wounds, and that he should pluck them with one hand only. Chapter 114. The trachemia. 1 property. What sort of plant the trachemia is, the authorities do not state. I think that the assurance given by Democritus must be false, for it would be nothing less than a prodigy for a plant attached as an amulet to consume the spleen in so short a time as 3 days. Chapter 115. The Trigonous or Tragion. 4 remedies. The Trigonous or Tragion grows nowhere but in the maritime districts of the Isle of Crete. It resembles the juniper in the seed, leaf, and branches. Its milky juice, which thickens in the form of a gum, or its seed taken in drink, expels pointed weapons from the flesh. The plant, too, is pounded fresh and applied as a liniment with wine, or dried and powdered with honey. It increases the milk in nursing women, and is a sovereign remedy for diseases of the mammae. Chapter 116. The Tragos or Scorpion. 4 remedies. There is another plant also called Tragos or Scorpion, by some half a foot in height, branchy, destitute of leaves, and bearing diminutive red clusters, with a seed like that of wheat, but pointed at the extremity. This too grows in maritime localities. 10 or 12 tops of the branches, bruised and taken in wine, are remedial in cases of celiac affections, dysentery, spitting of blood, and excessive menstruation. Chapter 117. The Tragapogon or Comé. There is the Tragapogon, also by some called Comé, a plant with a small stem, leaves like those of saffron, an elongated sweet root, and a large swarthy calyx at the extremity of the stem. It grows in rugged soils and is never used. Chapter 118. The ages of plants. Such, then, is all that I have hitherto been enabled to learn or discover worthy of mention relative to plants. At the close of this subject it seems to me that it will not be out of place to remind the reader that the properties of plants vary according to their age. It is Elaterium, as already stated, that preserves its properties the longest of all. The black chameleon retains its virtues 40 years, centuary not more than 12 Pusidonum, and Aristolochia 6, and the wild vine 1 year, that is to say, if they are kept in the shade. I would remark also that beyond those animals which breed within the plants, there are none that attack the roots of any of those which have been mentioned by me, with the exception indeed of the sphondile, a kind of creeping insect which infests them all. Chapter 119. How the greatest efficacy in plants may be ensured. It is also an undoubted truth that the virtues and properties of all roots are more feebly developed when the fruit has been allowed to ripen, and that it is the same with the seed when incisions have been previously made in the root for the extraction of the juice. The efficacy, too, of all plants is impaired by making habitual use of them, and these substances, if employed daily, lose equally their good or bad properties when required to be effectual. All plants, too, have more powerful properties when grown in soils that are cold and exposed to the northeastern blasts, or in dry localities. Chapter 120. Maladies peculiar to various nations. There are certain differences also, by no means inconsiderable, in the predispositions of the various nations of the earth. I have been informed, for instance, that the people of Egypt, Arabia, Syria, and Cilicia are subject to tapeworm and mawworm, while those of Thracia and Phrygia, on the other hand, are totally exempt from them. This, however, is less surprising than the fact that although Attica and Boeotia are adjoining territories, the Thebans are troubled with these inflictions, while among the people of Athens they are unknown. Considerations of this description lead me now to turn my attention to the nature of the animated beings themselves, and the medicinal properties which are inborn in them, the most assured remedies perhaps for all diseases. For nature, in fact, that parent of all things, has produced no animated being for the purpose solely of eating. She has willed that it should be born to satisfy the wants of others, and in its very vitals has implanted medicaments conducive to health. While she has implanted them in mute and inanimate objects even, she has equally willed that these, the most invaluable aids of life, should be also derived from the life of another, a subject for contemplation, marvellous in the highest degree. Summary, remedies, narratives, and observations. 602. Roman authors quoted: Caius Walgius, Pompeius Linnaeus, Sextius Niger, who wrote in Greek, Julius Bassus, who wrote in Greek, Antonius Castor, Cornelius Celsus. Foreign authors quoted: Theophrastus, Apollodorus, Democritus, Aristogeiton, Orpheus, Pythagoras, Mago, Menander, who wrote the Biocresta, Nicander. Medical authors quoted: Mnesothius, Timoristus, Simus, Hippocrates, Chrysippus, Diocles, Ophelion, Heraclides, Cassius, Dionysius, Apollodorus of Citium, Apollodorus of Tarentum, Praxagoras, Pleistonicus, Medius, Diuces, Cleophantus, Philistion, Aesculapiades, Cretuus, Pretonius, Diodotus, Iolus, Erasistratus, Diagoras, Andreas, Eminecides, Epicharmus, Damian Telepolemus, Metrodorus, Solo, Lycus, Olympius of Thebes, Philinus, Patricus, Micton, Glaucius, Xenocrates. End of Section 8.
Section 9 of The Natural History, Volume 6. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Olivia. The Natural History, Volume 6, by Pliny the Elder. Translated by John Bostock and Henry Thomas Riley. Section 9, Book 28, Chapters 1 to 7. Remedies derived from living creatures. Chapter 1, Introduction. We should have now concluded our description of the various things that are produced between the heavens and the earth, and it would have only remained for us to speak of the substances that are dug out of the ground itself, did not our exposition of the remedies derived from plants and shrubs necessarily lead us into a digression upon the medicinal properties which have been discovered, to a still greater extent, in those living creatures themselves, which are thus indebted to other objects for the cure of their respective maladies. For ought we, after describing the plants, the forms of the various flowers, and so many objects rare and difficult to be found, ought we to pass in silence the resources which exist in man himself for the benefit of man, and the other remedies to be derived from the creatures that live among us? And this more particularly, seeing that life itself is nothing short of a punishment unless it is exempt from pains and maladies? Assuredly not, and even though I may incur the risk of being tedious, I shall exert all my energies on the subject, it being my fixed determination to pay less regard to what may be amusing than to what may prove practically useful to mankind. Nay, even more than this, my researches will extend to the usages of foreign countries, and to the customs of barbarous nations, subjects upon which I shall have to appeal to the good faith of other authors, though at the same time I have made it my object to select no facts but such as are established by pretty nearly uniform testimony, and to pay more attention to scrupulous exactness than to copiousness of diction. It is highly necessary, however, to advertise the reader that whereas I have already described the natures of the various animals, and the discoveries due to them respectively, for, in fact, they have been no less serviceable in former times in discovering remedies than they are at the present day in providing us with them. It is my present intention to confine myself to the remedial properties which are found in the animal world, a subject which has not been altogether lost sight of in the former portion of this work. These additional details, therefore, though of a different nature, must still be read in connection with those which precede. Chapter 2. Remedies derived from man. We will begin then with man, and our first inquiries will be into the resources which he provides for himself, a subject replete with boundless difficulties at the very outset. Epileptic patients are in the habit of drinking the blood even of gladiators, draughts teeming with life, as it were, a thing that, when we see it done by the wild beasts even, upon the same arena, inspires us with horror at the spectacle. And yet these persons, forsooth, consider it a most effectual cure for their disease to quaff the warm, breathing blood from man himself, and as they apply their mouth to the wound, to draw forth his very life. And this, though it is regarded as an act of impiety to apply the human lips to the wound even of a wild beast. Others there are again, who make the marrow of the leg bones and the brains of infants the objects of their research. Among the Greek writers, too, there are not a few who have enlarged upon the distinctive flavors of each one of the viscera and members of the human body, pursuing their researches to the very parings of the nails, as though, forsooth, it could possibly be accounted the pursuit of health for man to make himself a wild beast, and so deserve to contract disease from the very remedies he adopts for avoiding it. Most righteously by Hercules, if such attempts are all in vain, is he disappointed of his cure. To examine human entrails is deemed an act of impiety. What then must it be to devour them? Say, Austintes, who it was who first devised these practices, for it is thee that I accuse, thou uprooter of all human laws, thou inventor of these monstrosities, devised, no doubt, with the view that mankind might not forget thy name. Who was it that first thought of devouring each member of the human body? By what conjectural motives was he induced? What can possibly have been the origin of such a system of medicine as this? Who was it that thus made the very poisons less baneful than the antidotes prescribed for them? Granted that barbarous and outlandish tribes first devised such practices, must the men of Greece, too, adopt these as arts of their own? We read, for instance, in the memoirs of Democritus, still extant, that for some diseases the skull of a malefactor is most efficacious, while for the treatment of others, that of one who has been a friend or guest is required. Apollonius, again, informs us in his writings that the most effectual remedy for toothache is to scarify the gums with the tooth of a man who has died a violent death. And, according to Maladies, human gall is a cure for cataract. For epilepsy, Ardemon has prescribed water drawn from the spring in the night and drunk from the skull of a man who has been slain and whose body remains unburnt. From the skull, too, of a man who has been hanged, Antaeus made pills that were to be an antidote to the bite of a mad dog. Even more than this, man has resorted to similar remedies for the cure of four-footed beasts even. For tympanitis in oxen, for instance, the horns have been perforated and human bones inserted, and when swine have been found to be diseased, fine wheat has been given them, which has lain for a night in the spot where a human being has been slain or burnt. Far from us, Far too from our writings be such prescriptions as these. It will be for us to describe remedies only, and not abominations. Cases, for instance, in which the milk of a nursing woman may have a curative effect, cases where the human spittle may be useful, or the contact of the human body, and other instances of a similar nature. We do not look upon life as so essentially desirable that it must be prolonged at any cost, be it what it may. And you, who are of that opinions, be assured, whoever you may be, that you will die none the less, even though you shall have lived in the midst of obscenities or abominations. Let each then reckon this as one great solace in his mind, that of the blessings which nature has bestowed upon man, there is none greater than the death which comes at a seasonable hour, and that the very best feature in connection with it is, that every person has it in his own power to procure it for himself. Chapter 3. Whether words are possessed of any healing effect. In reference to the remedies derived from man, there arises first of all one question, of the greatest importance and always attended with the same uncertainty, whether words, charms, and incantations are of any efficacy or not. For, if such is the case, it will be only proper to ascribe this efficacy to man himself. Though the wisest of our fellow men, I should remark, taken individually, refuse to place the slightest faith in these opinions. And yet, in our everyday life, we practically show, each passing hour, that we do entertain this belief, though at the moment we are not sensible of it. Thus, for instance, it is a general belief that without a certain form of prayer it would be useless to immolate a victim, and that with such an informality the gods would be consulted to little purpose. And then besides, there are different forms of address to the deities, one form for entreating, another form for averting their ire, and another for commendation. We see, too, how that our supreme magistrates use certain formula for their prayers, and not a single word may be omitted or pronounced out of its place. It is the duty of one person to precede the dignitary by reading the formula before him from a written ritual, of another to keep watch upon every word, and of a third to see that silence is not ominously broken, while a musician, in the meantime, is performing on the flute to prevent any other words being heard. Indeed, there are memorable instances recorded in our annals of cases where either the sacrifice has been interrupted or so blemished by imprecations, or a mistake has been made in the utterance of the prayer. The result has been that the lobe of the liver or the heart has disappeared in a moment, or has been doubled, while the victim stood before the altar. There is still in existence a most remarkable testimony in the formula which the Decii, father and son, pronounced on occasions when they devoted themselves. There is also preserved the prayer uttered by the Vestal Tucha, when, upon being accused of incest, she carried water in a sieve, an event which took place in the year of the city 609. Our own age even has seen a man and a woman buried alive in the ox market. Greeks by birth, or else natives of some other country with which we were at war at the time. The prayer used upon the occasion of this ceremonial, and which is usually pronounced first by the master of the college of the Quindesmaviri, if read by a person, most assuredly force him to admit the potency of formula, when it is recollected that it has been proved to be effectual by the experience of 830 years. At the present day, too, it is the general belief that our Vestal virgins have the power, by uttering a certain prayer, to arrest the flight of runaway slaves, and to rivet them to the spot, provided they have not gone beyond the precincts of the city. If, then, these opinions be once received as truth, and if it be admitted that the gods do listen to certain prayers, or are influenced by set forms of words, we are bound to conclude in the affirmative upon the whole question. Our ancestors, no doubt, always entertained such a belief, and have even assured us, a thing by far the most difficult of all, that it is possible by such means to bring down lightning from heaven, as already mentioned on a more appropriate occasion. Chapter 4. That prodigies and portents may be confirmed, or made of no effect. Lucius Piso informs us, in the first book of his Annals, that King Tullus Hostilius, while attempting, in accordance with the books of Numa, to summon Jupiter from heaven by means of a sacrifice similar to that employed by him, was struck by lightning in consequence of his omission to follow certain forms with due exactness. Many other authors, too, have attested that by the power of words a change has been effected in destinies and portents of the greatest importance, While they were digging on the Tarpeian hill for the foundations of a temple, a human head was found, upon which deputies were sent to Olaus Callianus, the most celebrated diviner of Etruria. He, foreseeing the glory and success which attached to such a presage as this, attempted, by putting a question to them, to transfer the benefit of it to his own nation, first describing on the ground before him the outline of a temple with his staff. "Is it so, Romans, as you say?" said he. "Here then must be the temple of Jupiter, all good and powerful. It is here that we have found the head." And the constant aversion by the annals is that the destiny of the Roman Empire would have been assuredly transferred to Etruria had not the deputies, forewarned by the son of the diviner, made the answer, "No, not here exactly, but at Rome, we say, the head was found." It is related also that the same was the case when a certain 4-horse chariot, made of clay and intended for the roof of the same temple, had considerably increased while in the furnace, and that on this occasion, in a similar manner, the destinies of Rome were saved. Let these instances suffice then to show that the virtues of presages lie in our own hands, and that they are valuable in each instance according as they are received. In all events, it is a principle in the doctrine of the augurs that neither imprecations nor auspices of any kind have any effect upon those who, when entering upon an undertaking, declare that they will pay no attention whatever to them. A greater instance than which of the indulgent disposition of the gods toward us cannot be found. And then besides, in the laws themselves of the 12 tables, do we not read the following words? "Whoever shall have enchanted the harvest," and in another place, "whosoever shall have used pernicious incantations." Various Flacius cites authors whom he deems worthy of credit, to show that on the occasion of a siege, it was the usage, the first thing of all, for the Roman priests to summon forth the tutelary divinity of that particular town, and to promise him the same rites, or even a more extended worship, at Rome. And at the present day even, this ritual still forms part of the discipline of our pontiffs. Hence it is, no doubt, that the name of the tutelary deity of Rome has been so strictly kept concealed, lest any of our enemies should act in a similar manner. There is no one, too, who does not dread being spellbound by means of evil imprecations, and hence the practice, after eating eggs or snails, of immediately breaking the shells, or piercing them with the spoon. Hence, too, those love-sick imitations of enchantments which we find inscribed by Theocritus among the Greeks, and by Catullus, and more recently Virgil, among our own writers. Many persons are fully persuaded that articles of pottery may be broken by a similar agency, and not a few are of the opinion even that serpents can counteract incantations, and that this is the only kind of intelligence they possess. So much so, in fact, that by the agency of the magic spells of the Marsi, they may be attracted to one spot, even when asleep in the middle of the night. Some people go so far, too, as to write certain words on the walls of houses, deprecatory of accident by fire. But it's not easy to say whether the outlandish and unpronounceable words that are thus employed, or the Latin expressions that are used at random, and which must appear ridiculous to our judgment, tend the most strongly to stagger our belief, seeing that the human imagination is always conceiving something of the infinite, something deserving of the notice of the divinity, or indeed, to speak more correctly, something that must command his intervention perforce. Homer tells us that Ulysses arrested the flow of blood from a wound in the thigh by repeating a charm, and Theophrastus says that sciatica may be cured by similar means. Cato has preserved a formula for the cure of sprains, and Marcus Varro for that of gout. The dictator Caesar, they say, having on one occasion accidentally had a fall from his chariot, was always in the habit, immediately upon taking his seat, of thrice repeating a certain formula, with the view of ensuring safety upon the journey, a thing that, to my knowledge, is done by many persons at the present day. Chapter 5. A description of various usages. I would appeal, too, for the confirmation on this subject to the intimate experience of each individual. Why, in fact, upon the first day of the new year, do we accost one another with prayers for good fortune, and, for luck's sake, wish each other a happy new year? Why, too, upon the occasion of public lustrations, do we select persons with lucky names to lead the victims? Why, to counteract fascinations, do we Romans observe a peculiar form of adoration in invoking the nemesis of the Greeks, whose statue, for this reason, has been placed in the Capitol at Rome, although the goddess herself possesses no Latin name? Why, when we make mention of the dead, do we protest that we have no wish to impeach their good name? Why is it that we entertain the belief that for every purpose odd numbers are the most effectual, a thing that is particularly observed with reference to the critical days in fevers? Why is it that, when gathering the earliest fruit, apples or pears, as the case may be, we make a point of saying, "This fruit is old, may other fruit be sent to us that is new"? Why is it that we salute a person when he sneezes, an observance which Tiberius Caesar, they say, the most unsociable of men, as we know, used to exact when riding in his chariot even? Some there are, too, who think it a point religiously to be observed to mention the name as well of the person whom they salute. And then besides, it is a notion universally received that absent persons have warning that others are speaking of them by the tingling of the ears. Attalus assures us that if a person, the moment he sees a scorpion, says, "Dwo," the reptile will stop short and forbear to sting. And now that I am speaking of the scorpion, I recall to mind that in Africa, no one ever undertakes any matter without prefacing with the word Africa, while in other countries, before an enterprise is commenced, it is the practice to adjure the gods that they will manifest their goodwill. In addition to this, it is very clear that there are some religious observances, unaccompanied by speech, which are considered to be productive of certain effects. Thus, when we are at table, for instance, it is the universal practice we see to take the ring off from the finger. Another person, again, will take some spittle from his mouth and place it with his finger behind the ear to propitiate and modify disquietude of mind. When we wish to signify applause, we have a proverb even, which tells us we should press the thumbs. When paying adoration, we kiss the right hand and turn the whole body to the right, while the people of the Gallic provinces, on the contrary, turn to the left, and believe they show more devoutness by doing so. To salute summer lightning with the clapping of the hands is a universal practice with all nations. If, when eating, we happen to make mention of a fire that has happened, we avert the inauspicious omen by pouring water beneath the table. To sweep the floor at the moment that a person is rising from table, or to remove the table or tray, as the case may be, while a guest is drinking, is looked upon as a most unfortunate presage. There is a treatise, written by Servius Sulpicius, a man of the highest rank, in which reasons are given why we should never leave the table we are eating at, for in his day it was not yet the practice to reckon more tables than guests at the entertainment. Where a person has sneezed, it is considered highly ominous for the dish or table to be brought back again, and not a taste thereof to be taken after doing so. The same, too, where a person at table eats nothing at all. These usages have been established by persons who entertained a belief that the gods are ever present in all our affairs and at all hours, and who have therefore found the means of appeasing them by our vices even. It has been remarked, too, that there is never a dead silence on a sudden among the guests at table, except when there is an even number present. When this happens, too, it is a sign that the good name and repute of every individual present is in peril. In former times, when food fell from the hand of a guest, it was the custom to return it by placing it on the table, and it was forbidden to blow upon it for the purpose of cleansing it. Auguries, too, have been derived from the words or thoughts of a person at the moment such an accident befalls him, and it is looked upon as one of the most dreadful of presages if this should happen to a pontiff while celebrating the feast of Dis. The proper expiation in such a case is to have the morsel replaced on the table and then burnt in honor of the lar. Medicines, it is said, will prove ineffectual if they happen to have been placed on the table before they are administered. It is religiously believed by many that it is ominous in a pecuniary point of view for a person to pare his nails without speaking on the market days at Rome, or to begin at the forefinger in so doing. It is thought, too, to be a preventative of baldness and of headache to cut the hair on the 17th and 29th days of the moon. A rural law observed in most of the farms of Italy forbids women to twirl their distaffs, or even to carry them uncovered, while walking in the public roads, it being a thing so prejudicial to all hopes and anticipations, those of a good harvest in particular. It is not so long ago that Marcus Servilius Nonianus, the principal citizen at Rome, being apprehensive of ophthalmia, had a paper with the 2 Greek letters Rho and Alpha written upon it, wrapped in linen and attached to his neck, before he would venture to name the malady, and before any other person had spoken to him about it. Mucianus, too, who was thrice consul, following a similar observance, carried about him a living fly, wrapped in a piece of white linen, and it was strongly asserted by both of them that to the use of these expedients they owed their preservation from ophthalmia. There are in existence also certain charms against hailstorms, diseases of various kinds, and burns, some of which have been proved by actual experience to be effectual. But so great is the diversity of opinion upon them that I am precluded by a feeling of extreme diffidence from entering into further particulars, and must therefore leave each to form his own conclusions as he may feel inclined. Chapter 6. 226 Observations on Remedies derived from man, 8 Remedies derived from children. We have already, when speaking of the singular peculiarities of various nations, made mention of certain men of monstrous nature, whose gaze is endowed with powers of fascination, and we have also described properties belonging to numerous animals, which it would be superfluous here to repeat. In some men, the whole of the body is endowed with remarkable properties, as in those families, for instance, which are a terror to serpents, it being in their power to cure persons when stung, either by the touch or by a slight suction of the wound. To this class belong the Scylli, the Marsi, and the people called Aphogenes in the Isle of Cyprus. One Euagon, a member of this family, while attending upon a deputation at Rome, was thrown by way of experiment, by order of the consuls, into a large vessel filled with serpents, upon which, to the astonishment of all, they licked his body all over with their tongues. One peculiarity of this family, if indeed it is still in existence, is the strong offensive smell which proceeds from their body in the spring. Their sweat, too, no less than their spittle, was possessed of remedial virtues. The people who are born at Tentyrus, an island on the river Nilus, are so formidable to the crocodiles there that their voice even is sufficient to put them to flight. The presence even, it is well known, of all these different races will suffice for the cure of injuries inflicted by the animals to which they respectively have an antipathy, just in the same way that wounds are irritated by the approach of persons who have been stung by a serpent at some former time, or bitten by a dog. Such persons, too, by their presence, will cause the eggs upon which a hen is sitting to be addled, and will make pregnant cattle cast their young and miscarry. For, in fact, so much of the venom remains in their body that from being poisoned themselves, they become poisonous to other creatures. The proper remedy in such a case is first to make them wash their hands, and then to sprinkle with water the patient who is under medical treatment. When, again, persons have been once stung by a scorpion, they will never afterwards be attacked by hornets, wasps, or bees, a fact at which a person will be the less surprised when he learns that a garment which has been worn at a funeral will never be touched by moths, that it is hardly possible to draw serpents from their holes except by using the left hand, and that, of the discoveries made by Pythagoras, one of the most unerring is the fact that in the name given to infants, an odd number of vowels is portentous of lameness, loss of eyesight, or similar accidents on the right side of the body, and an even number of vowels of the like infirmities on the left. It is said that if a person takes a stone or other missile which has slain 3 living creatures, a man, a boar, and a bear, at 3 blows, and throws it over the roof of a house in which there is a pregnant woman, her delivery, however difficult, will be instantly accelerated thereby. In such a case, too, a successful result will be rendered all the more probable if a light infantry lance is used, which has been drawn from a man's body without touching the earth. Indeed, if it is brought into the house, it will be productive of a similar result. In the same way, too, we find it stated in the writings of Orpheus and Archelaus that arrows, drawn from a human body without being allowed to touch the ground and placed beneath the bed, will have all the effect of a philtre, and, what is even more than this, that it is the cure for epilepsy if the patient eats the flesh of a wild beast killed with an iron weapon with which a human being has also been slain. Some individuals, too, are possessed of medicinal properties in certain parts of the body. The thumb of King Pyrrhus, for instance, as already mentioned. At Elis, there used to be shown one of the ribs of Pelops, which, it was generally asserted, was made of ivory. At the present day, even, there are many persons who, from religious motives, will never clip the hair growing on a mole on the face. Chapter 7. Properties of the human spittle. But it is the fasting spittle of a human being that is, as already stated by us, the sovereign preservative against the poison of serpents, while at the same time our daily experience may recognize its efficacy and utility in many other respects. We are in the habit of spitting, for instance, as a preservative from epilepsy, or in other words, we repel contagion thereby. In a similar manner, too, we repel fascinations and the evil presages attendant upon meeting a person who is lame in the right leg. We ask pardon of the gods by spitting in the lap for entertaining some too presumptuous hope or expectation. On the same principle, it is the practice in all cases where medicine is employed to spit 3 times on the ground and to conjure the malady as often, the object being to aid the operation of the remedy employed. It is usual, too, to mark a boil when it first makes its appearance 3 times with fasting spittle. What we are going to say is marvelous, but it may easily be tested by experiment. If a person repents of a blow given to another, either by hand or with a missile, he has nothing to do but to spit at once into the palm of the hand which has inflicted the blow, and all feelings of resentment will be instantly alleviated in the person struck. This, too, is often verified in the case of a beast of burden when brought onto its haunches by blows, for upon this remedy being adopted, the animal will immediately step out and mend its pace. Some persons, however, before making an effort, spit into the hand in the manner above stated in order to make the blow more heavy. We may well believe, then, that lichens and leprous spots may be removed by a constant application of fasting spittle, that ophthalmia may be cured by anointing, as it were, the eyes every morning with fasting spittle, that carcinomata may be effectually treated by kneading the root of the plant known as apple of the earth with human spittle, that crick in the neck may be got rid of by carrying fasting spittle to the right knee with the right hand and to the left knee with the left, and that when an insect has gotten into the ear, it is quite sufficient to spit into that organ to make it come out. Among the countercharms, too, are reckoned the practice of spitting into the urine the moment it is voided, of spitting into the shoe of the right foot before putting it on, and of spitting while a person is passing a place in which he has incurred any kind of peril. Marcion of Smyrna, who has written a work on the virtues of simples, informs us that the sea scolopendra will burst asunder if spit upon, and that the same is the case with bramble frogs and other kinds of frogs. Opilius says that serpents will do the same if a person spits into their open mouth, and Salpa tells us that when any part of the body is asleep, the numbness may be got rid of by the person spitting into his lap, or touching the upper eyelid with his spittle. If we are ready to give faith to such statements as these, we must believe also in the efficacy of the following practices. Upon the entrance of a stranger, or when a person looks at an infant while asleep, it is usual for the nurse to spit 3 times upon the ground, and this, although infants are under the special guardianship of the god Phalanus, the protector, not of infants only, but of generals as well, and a divinity whose worship is entrusted to the Vestal Virgins, and forms a part of the Roman rites. It is the image of this divinity that is attached beneath the triumphant ear of the victorious general, protecting him, like some attendant physician, against the effects of envy, while at the same time, usually salutary is the advice of the tongue, which warns him to be wise in time, so that fortune may be prevailed upon by his prayers, not to follow, as the destroyer of his glory, close upon his back. End of Section 9. Recording by Olivia.
Section 10 of the Natural History, Volume 6. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Natural History, Volume 6 by Pliny the Elder, translated by John Bostock and Henry Thomas Riley. Section 10, Book 28, Chapters 8 to 23. Chapter 8. Remedies derived from the wax of the human ear. The human bite is also looked upon as one of the most dangerous of all. The proper remedy for it is human ear wax, a thing that we must not be surprised at, seeing that, if applied immediately, it is a cure for the stings of scorpions, even, and serpents. The best, however, for this purpose is that taken from the ears of the wounded person. Agnails, too, it is said, may be cured in a similar manner. A human tooth, reduced to powder, is a cure, they say, for the sting of a serpent. Chapter 9. Remedies derived from the human hair, teeth, etc. The first hair, it is said, that is cut from an infant's head, and in fact the hair of all persons that have not reached the age of puberty, attached to the limbs, will modify the attacks of gout. A man's hair, applied with vinegar, is a cure for the bite of a dog, and is used with oil or wine for wounds on the head. It is said, too, if we choose to believe it, that the hair of a man torn down from the cross is good for quartan fevers. Ashes, too, of burnt human hair are curative of carcinomata. If a woman takes the first tooth that a child is shed, provided it has not touched the ground, and has it set in a bracelet, and wears it constantly upon her arm, it will preserve her from all pains in the uterus and adjacent parts. If the great toe is tied fast to the one next to it, it will reduce tumors in the groin, and if the two middle fingers of the right hand are slightly bound together with a linen thread, it will act as a preservative against catarrhs and ophthalmia. A stone, it is said, that has been voided by a patient suffering from calculi, if attached to the body above the pubes, will alleviate the pains of others similarly afflicted, as well as pains in the liver. It will have the effect also of facilitating delivery. Granius adds, however, that for this last purpose the stone will be more efficacious if it has been extracted with the knife. Delivery, when near at hand, will be accelerated if the man by whom the woman has conceived unties his girdle, and after tying it round her, unties it, adding at the same time this formula, "I've tied it, and I will untie it," and then taking his departure. Chapter 10. Remedies derived from the human blood, the sexual congress, etc. The blood of the human body, comes from what part it may, is most efficacious, according to Orpheus and Archelaus, as an application for quinsy. They say, too, that if it is applied to the mouth of a person who has fallen down in a fit of epilepsy, he will come to himself immediately. Some say that for epilepsy the great toes should be pricked, and the drops of blood that exude therefrom applied to the face, or else that a virgin should touch the patient with her right thumb, a circumstance that has led to the belief that persons suffering from epilepsy should eat the flesh of animals in a virgin state. Aquinas of Athens used to cure quinsy, carcinoma, and affections of the tonsillary glands and uvula with the ashes of burnt excrements, a medicament to which he gave the name of botryon. There are many kinds of diseases which disappear entirely after the first sexual congress, or in the case of females at the first appearance of menstruation. Indeed, if such is not the case, they are apt to become chronic, epilepsy in particular. Even more than this, a man, it is said, who has been stung by a serpent or scorpion experiences relief from the sexual congress, but the woman, on the other hand, is sensible of detriment. We are assured, too, that if persons, when washing their feet, touch the eyes 3 times with the water, they will never be subject to ophthalmia or other diseases of the eyes. Chapter 11. Remedies derived from the dead. Scrofula, impostumes of the parotid glands, and throat diseases, they say, may be cured by the contact of the hand of a person who has been carried off by an early death. Indeed, there are some who assert that any dead body will produce the same effect, provided it is of the same sex as the patient, and that the part affected is touched with the back of the left hand. To bite off a piece from wood that has been struck by lightning, the hands being held behind the back, and then to apply it to the tooth, is a sure remedy, they say, for toothache. Some persons recommend the tooth to be fumigated with the smoke of a burnt tooth, which has belonged to another person of the same sex, or else to attach to the person a dog tooth, as it is called, which has been extracted from a body before burial. Earth, they say, taken from out of a human skull, acts as a depilatory to the eyelashes. It is asserted also that any plant which may happen to have grown there, if chewed, will cause the teeth to come out, and that if a circle is traced round an ulcer with a human bone, it will be effectually prevented from spreading. Some persons, again, mix water in equal proportions from 3 different wells, and after making a libation with part of it in a new earthen vessel, administer the rest to patients suffering from tertian fever when the paroxysms come out. So, too, in cases of quartan fever, they take a fragment of a nail from a cross, or else a piece of a halter that has been used for crucifixion, and after wrapping it in wool, attach it to the patient's neck, taking care the moment he has recovered to conceal it in some hole to which the light of the sun cannot penetrate. Chapter 12. Various reveries and devices of the magicians. The following are some of the reveries of magic. A whetstone, upon which iron tools have been frequently sharpened, if put, without his being aware of it, beneath the pillow of a person sinking under the effects of poison, will make him give evidence and declare what poison has been administered, and at what time and place, though at the same time he will not disclose the author of the crime. When a person has been struck by lightning, if the body is turned upon the side which has sustained the injury, he will instantly recover the power of speech. That is quite certain. For the cure of inguinal tumors, some persons take the thrum of an old web, and after tying 7 or 9 knots in it, mentioning at each knot the name of some widow woman or other, attach it to the part affected. To assuage the pain of a wound, they recommend the party to take a nail or any other substance that has been trodden underfoot, and to wear it attached to the body with the thrum of a web. To get rid of warts, some lie in a footpath with the face upwards, when the moon is 20 days old at least, and after fixing their gaze upon it, extend their arms above the head, and rub themselves with anything within their reach. If a person is extracting a corn, at the moment that a star shoots, he will experience an immediate cure, they say. By pouring vinegar upon the hinges of a door, a thick liniment is formed which, applied to the forehead, will alleviate headache. In effect equally produced, we are told, by binding the temples with the halter with which a man has been hanged. When a fishbone happens to stick in the throat, it will go down immediately if the person plunges his feet into cold water. But where the accident has happened with any other kind of bone, the proper remedy is to apply to the head some fragments of bones taken from the same dish. In cases where bread has stuck in the throat, the best plan is to take some of the same bread and insert it in both ears. Chapter 13. Remedies derived from the human excretions. In Greece, where everything is turned to account, the owners of the gymnasia have introduced the very excretions, even of the human body, among the most efficient remedies, so much so indeed that the scrapings from the bodies of the athletes are looked upon as possessed of certain properties of an emollient, calorific, resolvent, and expletive nature, resulting from the compound of human sweat and oil. These scrapings are used in the form of pessary for inflammations and contractions of the uterus. Similarly employed, they act as an emmenagogue, and are useful for reducing condylomata and inflammations of the rectum, as also for assuaging pains in the sinews, sprains, and nodicities of the joints. The scrapings obtained from the baths are still more efficacious for these purposes, and hence it is that they form an ingredient in maturative preparations. Such scrapings are impregnated with wrestler's oil, used in combination with mud, have a mollifying effect upon the joints, and are more particularly efficacious as a calorific and resolvent, but in other respects their properties are not so strongly developed. The shameless and disgusting researches that have been made will quite transcend all belief when we find authors of the very highest repute proclaiming aloud that the male seminal fluid is a sovereign remedy for the sting of the scorpion. In the case, too, of women afflicted with sterility, they recommend the application of a pessary made of the first excrement that is voided by an infant at the moment of its birth. The name they give it is meconium. They have even gone so far, too, as to scrape the very filth from off the walls of the gymnasia, and to assert that this is also possessed of certain calorific properties. These scrapings are used as a resolvent for inflamed tumors, and are applied topically to ulcers upon aged people and children, and to excoriations and burns. Chapter 14. Remedies depending upon the human will. It would be the less becoming, then, for me to omit all mention of the remedies which depend upon the human will. Total abstinence from food or drink, or from wine only, from flesh, or from the use of the bath, in cases where the health requires any of these expedients, is looked upon as one of the most effectual modes of treating diseases. To this class of remedies must be added bodily exercise, exertion of the voice, anointings, and frictions according to a prescribed method. For powerful friction, it should be remembered, has a binding effect upon the body, while gentle friction, on the other hand, acts as a laxative. So, too, repeated friction reduces the body, while used in moderation it has a tendency to make flesh. But the most beneficial practice of all is to take walking or carriage exercise, this last being performed in various ways. Exercise on horseback is extremely good for affections of the stomach and hips, a voyage for phthisis, and a change of locality for diseases of long standing. So too a cure may sometimes be effected by sleep, by a recumbent position in bed, or by the use of emetics in moderation. To lie upon the back is beneficial to the sight, to lie with the face downwards is good for a cough, and to lie on the side is recommended for patients suffering from catarrh. According to Aristotle and Fabianus, it is towards spring and autumn that we are most apt to dream, and they tell us that persons are most liable to do so when lying on the back, but never when lying with the face downwards. Theophrastus assures us that the digestion is accelerated by lying on the right side, while on the other hand it is retarded by lying with the face upwards. The most powerful, however, of all remedies, and one which is always at a person's own command, is the sun. Violent friction, too, is useful by the agency of linen towels and body scrapers. To pour warm water on the head before taking the vapor bath, and cold water after it, is looked upon as a most beneficial practice. So too is the habit of taking cold water before food, of drinking it every now and then while eating, of taking it just before going to sleep, and if practicable, of waking every now and then and taking a draught. It is worthy also of remark that there is no living creature but man that is fond of hot drinks, a proof that they are contrary to nature. It has been ascertained by experiment that it is a good plan to rinse the mouth with undiluted wine before going to sleep for the purpose of sweetening the breath, to rinse the mouth with cold water an odd number of times every morning as a preservative against toothache, and to wash the eyes with oxyrate as a preventive of ophthalmia. It has been remarked also that the general health is improved by a varying regimen, subject to no fixed rules. 5. Hippocrates informs us that the viscera of persons who do not take the morning meal become prematurely aged and feeble, but then he has pronounced this aphorism, it must be remembered, by way of suggesting a healthful regimen, and not to promote gluttony, for moderation in diet is, after all, the thing most conducive to health. L. Lucullus gave charge to one of his slaves to overlook him in this respect, and a thing that reflected the highest discredit on him. When now an aged man, and laden with triumphs, he was feasting in the Capitol, even his hand had to be removed from the dish to which he was about to help himself. Surely it was a disgrace for a man to be governed by his own slave more easily than by himself. Chapter 15. 6. Remedies derived from sneezing. Sneezing provoked by a feather relieves heaviness in the head. It is said, too, that to touch the nostrils of a mule with the lips will arrest sneezing and hiccup. For this last purpose, Varro recommends us to scratch the palm first of one hand and then of the other, while many say that it is a good plan to shift the ring from off the left hand to the longest finger of the right, and then to plunge the hands into hot water. Theophrastus says that aged persons sneeze with greater difficulty than others. Chapter 16. Remedies derived from the sexual congress. Democritus spoke in condemnation of the sexual congress as being merely an act through which one human being springs from another, and really, by Hercules, the more rarely it is used the better. Still, however, athletes, we find, when they become dull and heavy, are re-established by it. The voice, too, is restored by it. When from being perfectly clear it is degenerated into hoarseness. The congress of the sexes is a cure also for pains in the loins, dimness of the eyesight, alienation of the mental difficulties, and melancholy. Chapter 17. Various other remedies. To sit by a pregnant woman, or by a person to whom any remedy is being administered with the fingers of one hand inserted between those of the other, acts as a magic spell, a discovery that was made, it is said, when Alcmena was delivered of Hercules. If the fingers are thus joined, clasping one or both knees, or if the ham of one leg is first put upon the knee of the other, and then changed about, the omen is of still worse signification. Hence it is that in councils held by generals and persons in authority. Our ancestors forbade these postures as being an impediment to all business. They have given a similar prohibition also with reference to sacrifices and the offering of public vows. But as to the usage of uncovering the head in presence of the magistrates that has been enjoined, Varro says, not as a mark of respect, but with a view to health, the head being strengthened by the practice of keeping it uncovered. When anything is got into the eye, it is a good plan to close the other, and when water has got into the right ear, the person should hop about on the left foot, with the head reclining upon the right shoulder, the reverse being done when the same has happened to the left ear. If the secretion of the phlegm produces coughing, the best way of stopping it is for another person to blow in the party's face. When the uvula is relaxed, another person should take the patient with his teeth by the crown and lift him from the ground, while for pains in the neck the hams should be rubbed, and for pains in the hams the neck. If a person is seized in bed with cramp in the sinews of the legs or thighs, he should set his feet upon the ground. So too, if he has cramp on the left side, he should take hold of the great toe of the left foot with the right hand, and if on the right angle, the great toe of the right foot with the left hand. For cold, shiverings, or for excessive bleeding at the nostrils, the extremities of the body should be well rubbed with sheep's wool. To arrest incontinence of urine, the extremities of the generative organs should be tied with a thread of linen or papyrus, and a binding passed round the middle of the thigh. For derangement of the stomach, it is a good plan to press the feet together, or to plunge the hands into hot water. In addition to all this, in many cases it is found highly beneficial to speak but little. Thus, for instance, Maecenas Melissus, we are told, enjoined silence on himself for 3 years in consequence of spitting blood after a convulsive fit. When a person is thrown from a carriage, or when, while mounting an elevation or line, extended at full length, he is menaced with any accident, or if he receives a blow, it is singularly beneficial to hold the breath, a discovery for which we are indebted to an animal, as already stated. To thrust an iron nail into the spot where a person's head lay at the moment he was seized with a fit of epilepsy is said to have the effect of curing him of that disease. For pains in the kidneys, loins, or bladder, it is considered highly soothing to void the urine lying on the face at full length in a reclining bath. It is quite surprising how much more speedily wounds will heal if they are bound up and tied with the Hercules knot. Indeed, it is said that if the girdle which we wear every day is tied with a knot of this description, it will be productive of certain beneficial effects, Hercules having been the first to discover the fact. Demetrius, in the treatise which he has compiled upon the number 4, alleges certain reasons why drink should never be taken in proportions of 4 kai athi or sextarii. As a preventive of ophthalmia, it is a good plan to rub the parts behind the ears, and as a cure for watery eyes, to rub the forehead. As to the presages which are derived from man himself, there is one to the effect that so long as a person is able to see himself reflected in the pupil of the patient's eye, there need be no apprehension of a fatal termination to the malady. Chapter 18. Remedies derived from the urine. The urine, too, has been the subject not only of numerous theories with authors, but of various religious observances as well, its properties being classified under several distinctive heads. Thus, for instance, the urine of eunuchs, they say, is highly beneficial as a promoter of fruitfulness in females. But to turn to those remedies which we may be allowed to name without impropriety, the urine of children who have not arrived at puberty is a sovereign remedy for the poisonous secretions of the asp, known as the poultice, from the fact that it spits its venom into the eyes of human beings. It is good too for the cure of albugo, films and marks upon the eyes, white specks upon the pupils, and maladies of the eyelids. In combination with meal of fitches, it is used for the cure of burns, and with a head of bulbed leek, it is boiled down to 1/2 in a new earthen vessel for the treatment of suppurations of the ears, or the extermination of worms breeding in those organs. The vapor, too, of this decoction acts as an emmenagogue. Salpi recommends that the eyes should be fomented with it as a means of strengthening the sight, and that it should be used as a liniment for sun scorches, in combination with white of egg, that of the ostrich being the most effectual, the application being kept on for a couple of hours. Urine is also used for taking out ink spots. Male urine cures gout. Witness the fullers, for instance, who for this reason, it is said, are never troubled with that disease. With stale urine, some mix ashes of calcined oyster shells for the cure of eruptions on the bodies of infants and all kinds of running ulcers. It is used too as a liniment for corrosive sores, burns, diseases of the rectum, chaps upon the body, and stings inflicted by scorpions. The most celebrated midwives have pronounced that there is no lotion which removes itching sensations more effectually, and with the addition of nitre, they prescribe it for the cure of ulcers of the head, prurigo, and cancerous sores, those of the generative organs in particular. But the fact is, and there is no impropriety in saying so, that every person's own urine is the best for his own case, due care being taken to apply it immediately and unmixed with anything else. In such cases as the bite of a dog, for instance, or the quill of a hedgehog entering the flesh, a sponge or some wool being the vehicle in which it is applied. Kneaded up with ashes, it is good for the bite of a mad dog and for the cure of stings inflicted by serpents. As to the bite of the scolopendra, the effects of urine are said to be quite marvellous. The person who has been injured has only to touch the crown of his head with a drop of his own urine, and he will experience an instantaneous cure. Chapter 19. Indications of health derived from the urine. Certain indications of the health are furnished by the urine. Thus, for example, if it is white at first in the morning and afterwards high-colored, the first signifies that the digestion is going on, the last that it is completed. When the urine is red, it is a bad sign, but when it is swarthy, it is the worst sign of all. So, too, when it is thick or full of bubbles, it is a bad sign, and when a white sediment forms, it is a symptom of pains in the region of the viscera or in the joints. A green-colored urine is indicative of disease of the viscera, a pale urine of biliousness, and a red urine of some distemper in the blood. The urine is in a bad state too when certain objects form in it, like bran or fine clouds in appearance. A thin white urine also is in a diseased state, but when it is thick and possessed of an offensive smell, it is significant of approaching death. So too when with children it is thin and watery. The adepts in magic expressly forbid a person when about to make water to uncover the body in the face of the sun or moon, or to sprinkle with his urine the shadow of any object whatsoever. Hesiod gives a precept recommending persons to make water against an object standing full before him, that no divinity may be offended by their nakedness being uncovered. Osthenes maintains that every one who drops some urine upon his foot in the morning will be proof against all noxious medicaments. Chapter 27. 41 Remedies derived from the female sex. The remedies said to be derived from the bodies of females closely approach the marvellous nature of prodigies, to say nothing of stillborn infants cut up limb by limb for the most abominable practices, expiations made with the menstrual discharge, and other devices which have been mentioned not only by midwives but by harlots even as well. The smell of a woman's hair burnt will drive away serpents and hysterical suffocations, it is said may be dispelled thereby. The ashes of a woman's hair burnt in an earthen vessel or used in combination with litharge will cure eruptions and prurigo of the eyes. Used in combination with honey, they will remove warts and ulcers upon infants. With the addition of honey and frankincense, they will heal wounds upon the head and fill up all concavities left by corrosive ulcers. Used with hog's lard, they will cure inflammatory tumors and gout, and applied topically to the part affected, they will arrest erysipelas and hemorrhage, and remove itching pimples on the body which resemble the stings of ants. Chapter 21. Remedies derived from woman's milk. As to the uses to which woman's milk has been applied, it is generally agreed that it is the sweetest and the most delicate of all, and that it is the best of remedies for chronic fevers and celiac affections, when the woman has just weaned her infant more particularly. In cases too of sickness at stomach, fevers, and gnawing sensations, that has been found by experience to be highly beneficial, as also in combination with frankincense for abscesses of the mammae, when the eyes are bloodshot from the effects of a blow, or affected with pain or defluxion. It is a very good plan to inject woman's milk into them, more particularly in combination with honey and juice of daffodil, or else powdered frankincense. In all cases, however, the milk of a woman who has been delivered of a male child is the most efficacious, and still more so if she has had male twins, provided always she abstains from wine and food of an acrid nature, mixed with the white of an egg in a liquid state, and applied to the forehead in wool. It arrests defluxions of the eyes. If a frog has spurted its secretions into the eye, woman's milk is a most excellent remedy, and for the bite of that reptile it is used both internally and externally. It is asserted that if a person is rubbed at the same moment with the milk of both mother and daughter, he will be proof for the rest of his life against all affections of the eyes. Mixed with a small quantity of oil, woman's milk is a cure for diseases of the ears, and if they are in pain from the effects of a blow, it is applied warm with goose grease. If the ears emit an offensive smell, a thing that is mostly the case in diseases of long standing, wool is introduced into those organs, steeped in woman's milk and honey. While symptoms of jaundice are still visible in the eyes, woman's milk is injected in combination with elaterium. Taken as a drink, it is productive of singularly good effects where the poison of the sea hare, the buprestis, or as Aristotle tells us, the plant doricnium, has been administered as a preventive also of the madness produced by taking henbane. Woman's milk also mixed with hemlock is recommended as a liniment for gout, while some there are who employ it for the purpose in combination with wool grease or goose grease, a form in which it is used as an application for pains in the uterus. Taken as a drink, it arrests diarrhea. Rabirius says, and acts as an emmenagogue, but where the woman has been delivered of a female child, her milk is of use only for the cure of face diseases. Woman's milk is also a cure for affections of the lungs, and mixed with the urine of a youth who has not arrived at puberty, and added honey in the proportion of 1 spoonful of each, it removes singing in the ears. I find dogs which have once tasted the milk of a woman who has been delivered of a male child will never become mad, they say. Chapter 22. Remedies derived from the spittle of females. A woman's fasting spittle is generally considered highly efficacious for bloodshot eyes. It is good also for deflections of those organs, the inflamed corners of the eyes being moistened with it every now and then. The result, too, is still more successful if the woman has abstained from food and wine the day before. I find it stated that headache may be alleviated by tying a woman's fillet round the head. Chapter 23. Facts connected with the menstrual discharge. Over and above these particulars, there is no limit to the marvelous powers attributed to females, for in the first place, hailstorms, they say, whirlwinds, and lightning even, will be scared away by a woman uncovering her body while her monthly courses are upon her. The same, too, with all other kinds of tempestuous weather, and out at sea a storm may be lulled by a woman uncovering her body merely, even though not menstruating at the time. As to the menstrual discharge itself, a thing that in other respects, as already stated on a more appropriate occasion, is productive of the most monstrous effects, there are some ravings about it of a most dreadful and unutterable nature. Of these particulars, however, I do not feel so much shocked at mentioning the following. If the menstrual discharge coincides with an eclipse of the moon or sun, the evils resulting from it are irremediable, and no less so when it happens while the moon is in conjunction with the sun, the congress with a woman at such a period being noxious, and attended with fatal effects to the man. At this period also the lustre of purple is tarnished by the touch of a woman, so much more baneful is her influence at this time than at any other. At any other time also, if a woman strips herself naked while she is menstruating, and walks round a field of wheat, the caterpillars, worms, beetles, and other vermin will fall from off the ears of corn. Metrodorus of Skepsos tells us that the discovery was first made in Cappadocia, and that in consequence of such multitudes of Catharides being found to breed there, it is the practice for women to walk through the middle of the fields with their garments tucked up above the thighs. In other places, again, it is the usage for women to go barefoot with the hair dishevelled and the girdle loose. Due precaution must be taken, however, that this is not done at sunrise, for if so, the crop will wither and dry up. Young vines, too, it is said, are injured irremediably by the touch of a woman in this state, and both rue and ivy plants possessed of highly medicinal virtues will die instantly upon being touched by her. Much as I have already stated on the virulent effects of this discharge, I have to state in addition that bees, it is a well-known fact, will forsake their hives if touched by a menstruous woman, that linen boiling in the cauldron will turn black, that the edge of a razor will become blunted, and that copper vessels will contract a fetid smell and become covered with verdigris on coming in contact with her. A mare big with foal, if touched by a woman in this state, will be sure to miscarry. Nay, even more than this, at the very sight of a woman, though seen at a distance even, she happened to be menstruating for the first time after the loss of her virginity, or for the first time while in a state of virginity. The bitumen that is found in Judea will yield to nothing but the menstrual discharge, its tenacity being overcome, as already stated, by the agency of a thread from a garment which has been brought in contact with this fluid. Fire itself, even, an element which triumphs over every other substance, is unable to conquer this, for if reduced to ashes and then sprinkled upon garments when about to be scoured, it will change their purple tint and tarnish the brightness of the colors. Indeed, so pernicious are its properties that women themselves, the source from which it is derived, are far from being proof against its effects. A pregnant woman, for instance, if touched with it, or indeed if she so much as steps over it, will be liable to miscarry. Laius and Elphantus have given statements quite at variance on the subject of abortives. They mention the efficacy for the purpose of charcoal, of cabbage root, myrtle root, or tamarisk root, quenched in the menstrual discharge. They say that she-asses will be barren for as many years as they have eaten barley corns steeped in this fluid, and they have enumerated various other monstrous and irreconcilable properties, the one telling us, for instance, that fruitfulness may be ensured by the very same methods which, according to the statement of the other, are productive of barrenness, to all which stories it is the best plan to refuse credit altogether. Bythus of Dyrrhachium informs us that a mirror which has been tarnished by the gaze of a menstruous female will recover its brightness if the same woman looks steadily upon the back of it. He states also that all evil influences of this nature will be entirely neutralized if the woman carries the fish known as the surmullet about her person. On the other hand, again, many writers say that, baneful as it is, there are certain remedial properties in this fluid, that it is a good plan, for instance, to use it as a topical application for gout, and that women, while menstruating, can give relief by touching scrofulous sores and impostumes of the parotid glands, inflamed tumors, erysipelas, boils, and defluxions of the eyes. According to Laius and Salpi, the bite of a mad dog, as well as tertian or quartan fevers, may be cured by putting some menstruous blood in the wool of a black ram and enclosing it in a silver bracelet, and we learn from Diotimus of Thebes that the smallest portion will suffice of any kind of cloth that has been stained therewith, a thread even if inserted and worn in a bracelet. The midwife Sotyra informs us that the most efficient cure for tertian and quartan fevers is to rub the soles of the patient's feet therewith, the result being still more successful if the operation is performed by the woman herself without the patient being aware of it. She says, too, that this is an excellent method for reviving persons when attacked with epilepsy. Isopyran, the physician, pledges his word that quartan fever may be cured by sexual intercourse, provided the woman is just beginning to menstruate. It is universally agreed, too, that when a person has been bitten by a dog and manifests a dread of water and of all kinds of drink, it will be quite sufficient to put upon his cup a strip of cloth that has been dipped in this fluid, the result being that the hydrophobia will immediately disappear. This arises, no doubt, from that powerful sympathy which has been so much spoken of by the Greeks, and the existence of which is proved by the fact already mentioned that dogs become mad upon tasting this fluid. It is a well-known fact, too, that the menstruous discharge, reduced to ashes and applied with furnace soot and wax, is a cure for ulcers upon all kinds of beasts of burden, and that stains made upon a garment with it can only be removed by the agency of the urine of the same female. Equally certain it is, too, that this fluid reduced to ashes and mixed with oil of roses is very useful applied to the forehead for allaying headache in women more particularly, as also that the nature of the discharge is most virulent in females whose virginity has been destroyed solely by the lapse of time. Another thing universally acknowledged, and one which I am ready to believe with the greatest pleasure, is the fact that if the door posts are only touched with the menstrual fluid, all spells of the magicians will be neutralized, a set of men the most lying in existence, as anyone may ascertain. I will give an example of one of the most reasonable of their prescriptions. Take the parings of the toenails and fingernails of a sick person, and mix them up with wax, the party saying that he is seeking a remedy for a tertian, quartan, or quotidian fever, as the case may be. Then stick this wax before sunrise upon the door of another person. Such is the prescription they give for these diseases. What deceitful persons they must be if there is no truth in it, and how highly criminal if they really do thus transfer diseases from one person to another. Some of them again, whose practices are of a less guilty nature, recommend that the parings of all the fingernails should be thrown at the entrance of ant holes, the first ant to be taken which attempts to draw one into the hole. This, they say, must be attached to the neck of the patient, and he will experience a speedy cure. End of section 10.
Section 7 of the Natural History, Volume 6. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Devin Tadlow. Chapter 24, Section 8. Remedies derived from foreign animals. The elephant. 8 remedies. Such then are the remedies from human beings which may with any degree of propriety be described, and many of those only with the leave and goodwill of the reader. The rest are of a most execrable and infamous nature, such, in fact, as to make me hasten to close my description of the remedies derived from man. We will therefore proceed to speak of the more remarkable animals, and the effects produced by them. The blood of the elephant, the male in particular, arrests all those defluxions known by the name of rheumatismi. Ivory shavings, it is said, in combination with Attic honey, are good for the removal of spots upon the face. With the sawdust, too, of ivory, hangnails are removed. By the touch of an elephant's trunk, headache is alleviated, if the animal happens to sneeze at the time, more particularly. The right side of the trunk, attached to the body with the red earth of Lemnos, acts powerfully as an aphrodisiac. Elephant's blood is good for consumption, and the liver for epilepsy. Chapter 25. 10 remedies derived from the lion. Lion's fat mixed with the oil of roses protects the skin of the face from all kinds of spots, and preserves the whiteness of the complexion. It is remedial also for such parts of the body as have been frozen by snow, and for swellings in the joints. The frivolous lies of the magicians assert that persons who are anointed with lion's fat will more readily win favor with kings and peoples, more particularly when the fat has been used that lies between the eyebrows of the animal, a place, in fact, where there is no fat to be found. The like effects they promise also from the possession of a lion's tooth, one from the right side in particular, as also the shaggy hairs that are found upon the lower jaw. The gall, used as an ointment in combination with water, improves the eyesight, and, employed with the fat of the same animal, is a cure for epilepsy. But the slightest taste only must be taken of it, and the patient must run immediately after swallowing it, in order to digest it. A lion's heart, used as food, is curative of quartan fevers, and the fat, taken with the oil of roses, of quotidian fevers. Wild beasts will fly from persons anointed with lion's fat, and it is thought to be a preservative even against treacherous practices. Chapter 26. 10 Remedies Derived from the Camel. A camel's brains, dried and taken in vinegar, are a cure, they say, for epilepsy. The same, too, with the gall, taken with honey, which is a remedy also for quinsy. A camel's tail dried, it is said, is productive of diarrhea, and ashes of burnt camel's dung mixed with oil make the hair curl. These ashes, applied topically, are very useful for dysentery, as also taken in drink, the proper dose being a pinch in 3 fingers at a time. They are curative also of epilepsy. Camel's urine, it is said, is very useful to fullers, and is good for the cure of running sores. Barbarous nations, we are told, are in the habit of keeping it till it is 5 years old, and then taking it as a purgative, in doses of 1 semi-sextarius. The hairs of the tail, it is said, plaited and attached to the left arm, are a cure for quartan fevers. Chapter 27. 79 Remedies Derived from the Hyena. But of all animals, it is the hyena that has been held in the highest admiration by the magicians, who have gone so far as to attribute to it certain magical virtues even, and the power of alluring human beings and depriving them of their senses. Of its change of sex each year, and other monstrous peculiarities in its nature, we have spoken already. We will now proceed to describe the medicinal virtues that are ascribed to it. The hyena, it is said, is particularly terrible to panthers, so much so indeed that they will not attempt to make the slightest resistance to it, and will never attack a man who has any portion of a hyena's skin about him. A thing truly marvelous to tell of, if the hides of these 2 animals are hung up facing one another, the hair will fall off of the panther's skin. When the hyena flies before the hunter, it turns off on the right, and letting the man get before it, follows in his track, should it succeed in doing which, the man is sure to lose his senses and fall from his horse even. But if, on the other hand, it turns to the left, it is a sign that the animal is losing strength, and that it will soon be taken. The easiest method, however, of taking it, they say, is for the hunter to tie his girdle with 7 knots, and to make as many knots in the whip with which he guides his horse. In addition to all this, so full of quirks and subtleties are the vain conceits of the magicians, that they recommend the hyena to be captured while the moon is passing through the sign of the Gemini, and every hair of it to be preserved if possible. They say, too, that the skin of the head is highly efficacious if attached to a person suffering from headache, that the gall applied to the forehead is curative of ophthalmia, and that if the gall is boiled down with 3 syathi of Attic honey and 1 ounce of saffron, it will be a most effectual preservative against that disease, the same preparation being equally good for the dispersion of films on the eyes and cataract. If, again, this preparation is kept till it is old, it will be all the better for improving the sight, due care being taken to preserve it in a box of Cyprian copper. They assert also that it is good for the cure of argyma, eruption and excrescences of the eyes, and marks upon those organs. For diseases of the crystalline humours of the eyes, it is recommended to anoint them with the gravy of hyena's liver roasted fresh, incorporated with clarified honey. We learn also from the same sources that the teeth of the hyena are useful for the cure of toothache, the diseased tooth being either touched with them or the animal's teeth being arranged in their regular order and attached to the patient. that the shoulders of this animal are good for the cure of pains in the arms and shoulders, that the teeth extracted from the left side of the jaw and wrapped in the skin of a sheep or he-goat are an effectual cure for pains in the stomach, that the lights of an animal taken with food are good for celiac affections, that the lights reduced to ashes and applied with oil are also soothing to the stomach, that the marrow of the backbone, used with old oil and gall, is strengthening to the sinews, that the liver, tasted thrice just before the paroxysms, is good for quartan fevers, that the ashes of the vertebrae, applied in hyena's skin with the tongue and right foot of a sea calf and a bull's gall, the whole boiled up together, are soothing for gout, that for the same disease hyena's gall is advantageously employed in combination with stone of Assos, that for the cold shiverings, spasms, sudden fits of starting, and palpitations of the heart, it is a good plan to eat some portion of a hyena's heart cooked, care being taken to reduce the rest to ashes, and to apply it with the brains of the animal to the part affected, that this last composition, or the gall applied alone, acts as a depilatory, the hairs being first plucked out which are wanted not to grow again, that by this method superfluous hairs of the eyelids may be removed, that the flesh of the loins, eaten and applied with oil, is a cure for pains in the loins, and that sterility in females may be removed by giving them the eye of this animal to eat, in combination with licorice and dill, conception within 3 days being warranted as the result. Persons afflicted with nightmare and dread of spectres will experience relief, they say, by attaching one of the large teeth of the hyena to the body with a linen thread. In fits of delirium, too, it is recommended to fumigate the patient with the smoke of one of these teeth, and to attach one in front of his chest with the fat of the kidneys, or else the liver or skin. They assert also that a pregnant woman will never miscarry if she wears suspended from her neck the white flesh from a hyena's breast, with 7 hairs and the genitals of a stag, the whole tied up in the skin of a gazelle. The genitals, they say, eaten with honey, act as a stimulant upon a person, according to the sex, and this even though it should be the case of a man who has manifested an aversion to all intercourse with females. Nay, even more than all this, we are assured that if the genitals and a certain joint of the vertebrae are preserved in a house with the hide adhering to them, they will ensure peace and concord between all members of the family. Hence it is that this part is known as the joint of the spine, or Atlantean knot. This joint, which is the first, is reckoned among the remedies for epilepsy. The fumes of the burnt fat of this animal will put serpents to flight, they say, and the jawbone, pounded with anise and taken with the food, is a cure for shivering fits. A fumigation made therewith has the effect of an emmenagogue, and such are the frivolous and absurd conceits of the professors of the magic art, that they boldly assert that if a man attaches to his arm a tooth from the right side of the upper jaw, he will never miss any object he may happen to aim at with a dart. The palate, dried and warmed with Egyptian alum, is curative of bad odors and ulcers of the mouth, care being taken to renew the application 3 times. Dogs, they say, will never bark at persons who have a hyena's tongue in the shoe, beneath the sole of the foot. The left side of the brain, applied to the nostrils, is said to have a soothing effect upon all dangerous maladies, either in men or beasts. They say, too, that the skin of the forehead is a preservative against all fascinations, that the flesh of the neck, whether eaten or dried and taken in drink, is good for pains in the loins, that the sinews of the back and shoulders, used as a fumigation, are good for pains in the sinews, that the bristles of the snout, applied to a woman's lips, have all the effect of a philtre, and that the liver, administered in drink, is curative of gripping pains and urinary calculi. The heart, it is said, taken with the food or drink, is remedial for all kinds of pains in the body, the milt for pains in the spleen, the caul, in combination with oil, for inflammatory ulcers, and the marrow for pains in the spine and weakness in the sinews. The strings of the kidneys, they say, if taken with wine and frankincense, will restore fruitfulness. In cases where it has been banished through the agency of noxious spells, the uterus, taken in drink with the rind of a sweet pomegranate, is highly beneficial for diseases of the uterus, and that the fat of the loins, used as a fumigation, removes all impediments to delivery and accelerates parturition. The marrow of the back, attached to the body as an amulet, is an effectual remedy for fantastic illusions, and the genitals of the male animal, used as a fumigation, are good for the cure of spasms. For ophthalmia, ruptures, and inflammations, the feet, which are kept for the purpose, are touched. The left feet for affections on the right side of the body, and the right feet for affections on the left. The left foot, if laid upon the body of a woman in travail, will be productive, they say, of fatal effects. But the right foot, similarly employed, will facilitate delivery. The vesicle which has contained the gall, taken in wine or with food, is beneficial for cardiac disease, and the bladder, taken in wine, is a good preservative against incontinence of the urine. The urine, too, which is found in the bladder, taken with oil, sesame, and honey, is said to be useful for diseases of long standing. The first rib and the eighth, used as a fumigation, are said to be useful for ruptures, the vertebrae for women in travail, and the blood, in combination with polenta, for griping pains in the bowels. If the doorposts are touched with this blood, the various arts of the magicians will be rendered of no effect. They will neither be able to summon the gods into their presence, nor to converse with them, whatever the method to which they have recourse, whether lamps or basin, water or globe, or any other method. The flesh of the hyena, taken as food, is said to be efficacious for the bite of a mad dog, and the liver still more so. The flesh or bones of a human being, which have been found in the belly of a slain hyena, used as a fumigation, are said to be remedial for gout. But if among these remains the nails are found, it is looked upon as a presage of death to someone among those who have captured it. The excrements or bones which have been voided by the animal at the moment when killed are looked upon as counter charms to magic spells. The dung found in the intestines is dried and administered in drink for dysentery, and it is applied to all parts of the body with goose grease, in the form of a liniment, in the case of persons who have received injury from some noxious medicament. By rubbing themselves with the grease, and lying upon the skin of a hyena, persons who have been bitten by dogs are cured. On the other hand, the ashes of the left pastern bone, they say, boiled with weasel's blood and applied to a person's body will ensure universal hatred, a similar effect being equally produced by the eye when boiled. But the most extraordinary thing of all is their assertion that the extremity of the rectum of this animal is a preservative against all oppression on the part of chiefs and potentates, and an assurance of success in all petitions, judgments, and lawsuits, and this, if a person only carries it about him. The anus, according to them, has so powerful an effect as a philtre that if it is worn on the left arm, a woman will be sure to follow the wearer the moment he looks at her. The hairs, too, of this part, reduced to ashes and applied with oil to the body of a man who is living a life of disgraceful effeminacy, will render him not only modest, they assure us, but of scrupulous morals even. Chapter 28. 19 Remedies Derived from the Crocodile. For fabulous stories connected with it, the crocodile may challenge the next place, and indeed for cunning, the one which lives both upon land and in the water is fully its equal. For I here would remark that there are two varieties of this animal. The teeth of the right jaw of the amphibious crocodile, attached to the right arm as an amulet, acts as an aphrodisiac, that is, if we choose to believe it. The eye teeth of the animal, filled with frankincense, for they are hollow, are a cure for periodical fevers, care being taken to let the patient remain 5 days without seeing the person who has attached them to his body. A similar virtue is attributed to the small stones which are found in the belly of this animal, as being a check to the cold shiverings in fevers, when about to come on. And with the same object, the Egyptians are in the habit of anointing their sick with the fat of the crocodile. The other kind of crocodile resembles it, but is much inferior in size. It lives upon land only, and among the most odoriferous flowers. Hence it is that its intestines are so greatly in request, being filled as they are with a mass of agreeable perfumes. This substance is called crocodilea, and it is looked upon as an extremely beneficial for diseases of the eyes, and for the treatment of films and cataract, being applied with leek juice in the form of an ointment. Applied with oil of cypress, it removes blemishes growing upon the face, and employed with water, it is a cure for all those diseases, the nature of which it is to spread upon the face, while at the same time it restores the natural tints of the skin. An application of it makes freckles disappear, as well as all kinds of spots and pimples, and it is taken for epilepsy, in doses of 2 oboli in oxymel. Used in the form of a pessary, it acts as an emmenagogue. The best kind of crocodiles is that which is the whitest, friable, and the lightest in weight. When rubbed between the fingers, it should ferment like leaven. The usual method is to wash it, as they do white lead. It is sometimes adulterated with amylum or with simoleon earth, but the most common method of sophistication is to catch the crocodiles and feed them upon nothing but rice. It is recommended as one of the most efficient remedies for cataract to anoint the eyes with crocodile's gall incorporated with honey. We are assured also that it is highly beneficial for affections of the uterus to make fumigations with the intestines and rest of the body, or else to envelop the patient with wool impregnated with the smoke. The ashes of the skin of either crocodile, applied with vinegar to such parts of the body as are about to undergo an incision, or indeed the very smell of the skin when burning, will render the patient insensible to the knife. The blood of either crocodile, applied to the eyes, effaces marks upon those organs and improves the sight. The body, with the exception of the head and feet, is eaten, boiled, for the cure of sciatica, and is found very useful for chronic coughs. In children more particularly, it is equally good too for the cure of lumbago. These animals have a certain fat also, which, when applied to the hair, makes it fall off. Persons anointed with this fat are effectually protected against crocodiles, and it is the practice to drop it into the wounds inflicted by them. A crocodile's heart, attached to the body in the wool of a black sheep, without a speck of any other colour, due care too being taken that the sheep was the first lamb yeaned by its dam, will effectually cure a quartan fever, it is said. Chapter 29. 15 Remedies derived from the chameleon. To these animals we shall annex some others that are equally foreign and very similar in their properties. To begin then with the chameleon, which Democritus has considered worthy to be made subject of an especial work, and that each part of which has been consecrated to some particular purpose. This book, in fact, has afforded me no small amusement, revealing as it does and exposing the lies and frivolities of the Greeks. In size, the chameleon resembles the crocodile last mentioned, and only differs from it in having the backbone arched at a more acute angle and a larger tail. There is no animal, it is thought, more timid than this, a fact to which it owes its repeated changes of color. It has a peculiar ascendancy over the hawk tribe, for, according to report, it has the power of attracting those birds when flying above it, and then leaving them a voluntary prey for other animals. Democritus asserts that if the head and neck of a chameleon are burnt in a fire made with logs of oak, it will be productive of a storm, attended with rain and thunder, a result equally produced by burning the liver upon the tiles of a house. As to the rest of the magical virtues which he ascribes to this animal, we shall forbear to mention them, although we look upon them as unfounded, except, indeed, in some few instances where their very ridiculousness sufficiently refutes his assertions. The right eye, he says, taken from the living animal and applied with goat's milk, removes diseases of crystalline humours of the eyes, and the tongue, attached to the body as an amulet, is an effectual preservative against the perils of childbirth. He asserts also that the animal itself will facilitate parturition, if in the house at the moment, but if, on the other hand, it is brought from elsewhere, the consequences, he says, will be most dangerous. The tongue, he tells us, if taken from the animal alive, will ensure a favorable result to suits at law, and the heart, attached to the body with black wool of the first shearing, is a good preservative against the attacks of quartan fever. He states also that the right forepaw, attached to the left arm in the skin of the hyena, is a most effectual preservative against robberies and alarms at night. That the pap on the right side is preventative of fright and panics. That the left foot is sometimes burnt in a furnace with the plant which also has the name of chameleon, and is then made up with some unguent into lozenges, and that these lozenges, kept in a wooden vessel, have the effect, if we choose to believe him, of making their owner invisible to others. That the possession also of the right shoulder of this animal will ensure victory over all adversaries or enemies, provided always the party throws the sinews of the shoulder upon the ground and treads them underfoot. As the left shoulder of the chameleon, I should be quite ashamed to say to what monstrous purposes Democritus devotes it. How that dreams may be produced by the agency thereof, and transferred to any person we may think proper. How that these dreams may be dispelled by the employment of the right foot, and how that lethargy, which has been produced by the right foot of the animal, may be removed by the agency of the left side. So too headache, he tells us, may be cured by sprinkling wine upon the head, in which either flank of a chameleon has been macerated. If the feet are rubbed with the ashes of the left thigh or foot, mixed with sow's milk, gout, he says, will be the result. It is pretty generally believed, however, that cataract and diseases of the crystalline humors of the eyes may be cured by anointing those organs with the gall for 3 consecutive days, that serpents may be put to flight by dropping some of it into the fire, that weasels may be attracted by water into which it has been thrown, and that, applied to the body, it acts as a depilatory. The liver, they say, applied with the lungs of a bramble frog, is productive of a similar effect. In addition to which, we are told that the liver counteracts the effects of philters, that persons are cured of melancholy by drinking from the warm skin of a chameleon the juice of the plant known by that name, and that if the intestines of the animal and their contents, we should bear in mind that in reality the animal lives without food, are mixed with ape's urine, and the doors of an enemy are besmeared with the mixture, he will, through its agency, become the object of universal hatred. We are told, too, that by the agency of the tail, the course of rivers and torrents may be stopped, and serpents, struck with torpor, that the tail, prepared with cedar and myrrh, and tied to a double branch of the date palm, will divide waters that are smitten therewith, and so disclose everything that lies at the bottom. And I only wish that Democritus himself had been touched up with the branch of the palm, seeing that, as he tells us, it has the property of putting an end to immoderate garrulity. It is quite evident that this philosopher, a man who has shown himself so sagacious in other respects, and so useful to his fellow men, has been led away in this instance by too earnest a desire to promote the welfare of mankind. Chapter 30. 4 remedies derived from the sticus. Similar in appearance to the preceding animals is the sticus, which by some writers has been called the land crocodile. It is, however, whiter in appearance, and the skin is not so thick. But the main difference between it and the crocodile is in the arrangement of the scales, which run from the tail towards the head. The largest of these animals is the Indian sticus, and next to it that of Arabia. They are brought here salted. The muscle and fat of the sticus, taken in white wine, act as an aphrodisiac, when used with satyrion and rocket seed more particularly, in the proportion of 1 drachma of each, mixed with 2 drachmae of pepper, the whole being made up into lozenges of 1 drachma each, and so taken in drink. The flesh from the flanks taken internally in a similar manner, in doses of 2 oboli, with myrrh and pepper is generally thought to be productive of a similar effect, and to be even more efficacious for the purpose. According to Apelles, the flesh of the sticus is good for wounds inflicted by poisoned arrows, whether taken before or after the wound is inflicted. It is used as an ingredient also in the most celebrated antidotes. Sextus tells us that taken in doses of more than 1 drachma in 1 semisextarius of wine, the flesh is productive of deadly results. He adds too that a broth prepared from it, taken with honey, acts as an antiphrodisiac. Chapter 31. 7 remedies derived from the hippopotamus. Between the crocodile too and the hippopotamus there is a certain affinity, frequenting as they do the same river, and being both of them of an amphibious nature. The hippopotamus was the first inventor of the practice of letting blood, a fact to which we have made allusion on a previous occasion. It is found too in the greatest numbers in the parts above the prefecture of Sais. The hide, reduced to ashes and applied with water, is curative of inflamed tumors, and the fat, as well as the dung, used as a fumigation, is employed for the cure of cold agues. With the teeth of the left side of the jaw, the gums are scarified for the cure of toothache. The skin of the left side of the forehead, attached to the groin, acts as an antiphrodisiac, and an application of the ashes of the same part will cause the hair to grow when lost through alopecia. The testes are taken in water in doses of 1 drachma for the cure of injuries inflicted by serpents. The blood is made use of by painters. Chapter 32. 5 remedies derived from the lynx. To foreign countries also belongs the lynx, which of all quadrupeds is possessed of the most piercing sight. It is said that in the Isle of Carpathus a most powerful medicament is obtained by reducing to ashes the nails of the lynx, together with the hide, that these ashes taken in drink have the effect of checking abominable desires in men, and that if they are sprinkled upon women, all libidinous thoughts will be restrained. They are good too for the removal of itching sensations in any part of the body. The urine of the lynx is a remedy for strangury, for which reason the animal, it is said, is in the habit of rooting up the ground and covering it the moment it is voided. It is mentioned too that this urine is an effectual remedy for pains in the throat. Thus much with reference to foreign animals. Chapter 33. 9. Remedies furnished in common by animals of the same class, whether wild or tame. 54 medicinal uses of milk, with observations thereon. We will now return to our own part of the world, speaking first of all of certain remedies common to animals in general, but excellent in their nature, such as the use of milk, for example. The most beneficial milk to every creature is the mother's milk. It is highly dangerous for nursing women to conceive. Children that are suckled by them are known among us as colostrati, their milk being thick like cheese in appearance. The name colostra, it should be remembered, is given to the first milk secreted after delivery, which assumes a spongy, coagulated form. The most nutritive milk in all cases is woman's milk, and next to that, goat's milk, to which is owing, probably, the fabulous story that Jupiter was suckled by a goat. The sweetest next to woman's milk is camel's milk, but the most efficacious, medicinally speaking, is ass's milk. It is in animals of the largest size and individuals of the greatest bulk that the milk is secreted with the greatest facility. Goat's milk agrees the best with the stomach, that animal browsing more than grazing. Cow's milk is considered more medicinal, while ewe's milk is sweeter and more nutritive, but not so well adapted to the stomach, it being more oleaginous than any other. Every kind of milk is more aqueous in spring than in summer, and the same in all cases where the animal has grazed upon a new pasture. The best milk of all is that which adheres to the fingernail when placed there, and does not run off from it. Milk is most harmless when boiled, more particularly if sea pebbles have been boiled with it. Cow's milk is the most relaxing, and all kinds of milk are less apt to inflate when boiled. Milk is used for all kinds of internal ulcerations, those of the kidneys, bladder, intestines, throat, and lungs in particular, and externally it is employed for itching sensations upon the skin, and for purulent eruptions, it being taken fasting for the purpose. We have already stated, when speaking of the plants, how that in Arcadia cow's milk is administered for phthisis, consumption, and cachexy. Instances are cited also of persons who have been cured of gout in the hands and feet by drinking ass's milk. To these various kinds of milk, medical men have added another, to which they have given the name schistin, the following being the usual method of preparing it. Goat's milk, which is used in preference for the purpose, is boiled in a new earthen vessel, and stirred with branches of a fig tree newly gathered, as many cyathi of honeyed wine being added to it as there are semisextarii of milk. When the mixture boils, care is taken to prevent it running over, by plunging it into a silver cyathus measure filled with cold water, none of the water being allowed to escape. When taken off the fire, the constituent parts of it divide as it cools, and the whey is thus separated from the milk. Some persons, again, take this whey, which is now very strongly impregnated with wine, and after boiling it down to 1/3, leave it to cool in the open air. The best way of taking it is in doses of 1 semisextarius, at stated intervals during 5 consecutive days. After taking it, riding exercise should be used by the patient. This whey is administered in cases of epilepsy, melancholy, paralysis, leprosy, elephantitis, and diseases of the joints. Milk is employed as an injection when excoriations have been caused by the use of strong purgatives. In cases also where dysentery is productive of chafing. It is similarly employed, boiled with sea pebbles or tseon of barley. Where, however, the intestines are excoriated, cow's milk or ewe's milk is the best. New milk is used as an injection for dysentery, and in an unboiled state it is employed for affections of the colon and uterus, and for injuries inflicted by serpents. It is also taken internally as an antidote to the venom of cantharides, the pine caterpillar, the buprestis, and the salamander. Cow's milk is particularly recommended for persons who have taken colchium, hemlock, doricinium, or the flesh of the sea hare, and ass's milk in cases where gypsum, white lead, sulfur, or quicksilver have been taken internally. This last is good too for constipation attendant upon fever, and is remarkably useful as a gargle for ulcerations of the throat. It is taken also internally by patients suffering from atrophy, for the purpose of recruiting their exhausted strength, as also in cases of fever unattended with headache. The ancients held it as one of their grand secrets to administer to children before taking food a semi-sextarius of ass's milk, or for want of that, goat's milk, a similar dose too, was given to children troubled with chafing of the rectum at stool. It is considered a sovereign remedy for hardness of breathing to take cow's milk whey mixed with nasturtium. In cases of ophthalmia, too, the eyes are fomented with a mixture of 1 semi-sextarius of milk and 4 drachmae of pounded sesame. Goat's milk is a cure for diseases of the spleen, but in such case the goats must fast a couple days and be fed on ivy leaves the third. The patient too must drink the milk for 3 consecutive days without taking any other nutriment. Milk, under other circumstances, is detrimental to persons suffering from headache, liver complaints, diseases of the spleen, and affections of the sinews. It is bad for fevers also, vertigo, except indeed where it is required as a purgative, oppression of the head, coughs, and ophthalmia. Sow's milk is extremely useful in cases of tenesmus, dysentery, and phthisis. Authors have been found too to assert that it is very wholesome for females. End of section 11 of Pliny's Natural History. Recording by Devin Tatlow.
Section 12 of the Natural History, Volume 6. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Randall Meredith. The Natural History, Volume 6, by Pliny the Elder. Translated by John Bostock and Henry Thomas Riley. Section 12, Book 28, Chapters 34 through 45. Chapter 34, 12 Remedies Derived from Cheese. We have already spoken of the different kinds of cheese when treating of the mammalae and other parts of animals. Sextius attributes the same properties to mare's milk cheese that he does to cheese made of cow's milk. To the former he gives the names of hippase. Cheese is best for the stomach when not salted, or, in other words, when new cheese is used. Old salted cheese has a binding effect upon the bowels and reduces the flesh, but it is more wholesome to the stomach than new salted cheese. Indeed, we may pronounce of aliments in general that salt meats reduce the system, while fresh food has a tendency to make flesh. Fresh cheese, applied with honey, effaces the marks of bruises. It acts also emolliently upon the bowels, and, taken in the form of tablets, boiled in astringent wine, and then toasted with honey on a platter, it modifies and alleviates gripping pains in the bowels. The cheese known as saprum is beaten up in wine with salt and dried sorb apples and taken in drink for the cure of celiac affections. Goat's milk cheese, pounded and applied to the part affected, is a cure for carbuncle of the generative organs. Sour cheese also, with oxymel, is productive of a similar effect. In the bath it is used as a friction, alternately with oil, for the removal of spots. Chapter 35. 25 Remedies Derived from Butter. From milk, too, butter is produced. Held as the most delicate of food among barbarous nations, and one which distinguishes the wealthy from the multitude at large. It is mostly made from cow's milk, and hence its name. But the richest butter is that made from ewe's milk. There is a butter made also from goat's milk, but previously to making it, the milk should first be warmed in winter. In summer, it is extracted from the milk by merely shaking it to and fro in a tall vessel, with a small orifice at the mouth to admit the air, but otherwise closely stopped. a little water being added to make it curdle the sooner. The milk that curdles the most floats upon the surface. This they remove, and, adding salt to it, give it the name of oxygala. They then take the remaining part and boil it down in pots, and that portion of it which floats on the surface is butter, a substance of an oily nature. The more rank it is in smell, the more highly it is esteemed. When old, it forms an ingredient in numerous compositions. It is of an astringent, emollient, repletive, and purgative nature. Chapter 36. Oxygala, one remedy. Oxygala 2 is prepared another way, sour milk being added to the fresh milk which is wanted to curdle. This preparation is extremely wholesome to the stomach. Of its properties we shall have occasion to speak in another place. Chapter 37. The various uses of fat and observations upon it, 52 in number. Among the remedies common to living creatures, fat is the substance held in the next highest esteem, that of swine in particular, which was employed by the ancients for certain religious purposes even. At all events, it is still the usage for the newly wedded bride, when entering her husband's house, to touch the doorposts with it. There are two methods of keeping hog's lard, either salted or fresh. Indeed, the older it is the better. The Greek writers have now given it the name of axungia, or axle grease, in their works. Nor, in fact, is it any secret why swine's fat should be possessed of such marked properties, seeing that the animal feeds to such a great extent upon the roots of plants, owing to which its dung is applied to such a vast number of purposes. It will be as well, therefore, to premise that I shall here speak only of the hog that feeds in the open field, and no other, of which kind it is the female that is much the most useful, if she has never farrowed, more particularly. But it is the fat of the wild boar that is held in by far the highest esteem of all. The distinguishing properties, then, of swine's grease are emollient, calorific, resolvent, and detergent. Some physicians recommend it as an ointment for the gout, mixed with goose grease, bull suet, and wool grease. In cases, however, where the pain is persistent, it should be used in combination with wax, myrtle, resin, and pitch. Hog's lard is used fresh for the cure of burns and of blains too, caused by snow. With ashes of burnt barley and nut galls in equal proportions, it is employed for the cure of chilblains. It is good also for excoriations of the limbs and for dispelling weariness and lassitude arising from long journeys. For the cure of chronic cough, new lard is boiled down in the proportion of 3 ounces to 3 cyathi of wine, some honey being added to the mixture. Old lard, too, if it has been kept without salt, made up into pills and taken internally, is a cure for phthisis, but it is a general rule not to use it salted in any cases except where detergents are required, or where there are no symptoms of ulceration. For the cure of phthisis, some persons boil down 3 ounces of hog's lard and honeyed wine in 3 cyathi of ordinary wine, and after swathing the sides, chest, and shoulders of the patient with compresses steeped in the preparation, administer to him every 4 days some tar with an egg. Indeed, so potent is this composition that if it is only attached to the knees even, the flavor of it will ascend to the mouth, and the patient will appear to spit it out, as it were. The grease of a sow that has never farrowed is the most useful of all cosmetics for the skin of females, but in all cases hog's lard is good for the cure of itch scab mixed with pitch and beef suet in the proportion of 1/3, the whole being made lukewarm for the purpose. Fresh hog's lard, applied as a pessary, imparts nutriment to the infant in the womb, and prevents abortion. Mixed with white lead or litharge, it restores scars to their natural color, and in combination with sulfur, it rectifies malformed nails. It prevents the hair also from falling off, and, applied with a quarter of a nut gall, it heals ulcers upon the head in females. When well smoked, it strengthens the eyelashes. Lard is recommended also for phthisis, boiled down with old wine in the proportion of 1 ounce to a semisextarius, till only 3 ounces are left. Some persons add a little honey to the composition. Mixed with lime, it is used as a liniment for inflamed tumors, boils, and indurations of the mammae. It is curative also of ruptures, convulsions, cramps, and sprains. Used with white hellebore, it is good for corns, chaps, and callosities, and with pounded earthenware which has held salted provisions, for imposthumes of the parotid glands and scrofulous sores. Employed as a friction in the bath, it removes itching sensations and pimples. But for the treatment of gout, there is another method of preparing it, by mixing it with old oil and adding pounded sarcophagus stone and cinquefoil bruised in wine, or else with lime or ashes. A peculiar kind of plaster is also made of it for the cure of inflammatory ulcers, 75 denarii of hog's lard being mixed with 100 of litharge. It is reckoned a very good plan also to anoint ulcers with boar's grease, and, if they are of a serpiginous nature, to add resin to the liniment. The ancients used to employ hog's lard in particular for greasing the axles of their vehicles, that the wheels might revolve the more easily, and to this in fact it owes its name of axongia. When hog's lard has been used for this purpose, incorporated as it is with the rust of the iron upon the wheels, it is remarkably useful as an application for diseases of the rectum and of the generative organs. The ancient physicians, too, set a high value upon the medicinal properties of hog's lard in an unmixed state. Separating it from the kidneys, and carefully removing the veins, they used to wash and rub it well with rainwater, after which they boiled it several times in a new earthen vessel, and then put it by for keeping. It is generally agreed that it is more emollient, calorific, and resolvent when salted, and that it is still more useful when it has been rinsed in wine. Masurius informs us that the ancients set the highest value of all upon the fat of the wolf, and it was for this reason that the newly wedded bride used to anoint the doorposts of her husband's house with it, in order that no noxious spells might find admittance. Chapter 38. Suet. Corresponding with the grease of the swine is the suet that is found in the ruminating animals, a substance employed in other ways, but no less efficacious in its properties. The proper mode of preparing it, in all cases, is to take out the veins and to rinse it in sea or salt water, after which it is beaten up in a mortar, with a sprinkling of sea water in it. This done, it is boiled in several waters until, in fact, it has lost all smell, and is then bleached by continual exposure to the sun, that of the most esteemed quality being the fat which grows about the kidneys. In case stale suet is required for any medicinal purpose, it is recommended to melt it first, and then to wash it in cold water several times, after which it must again be melted with a sprinkling of the most aromatic wine that can be procured, it being then boiled again and again until the rank smell has totally disappeared. Many persons recommend that the fat of bulls, lions, panthers, and camels in particular should be thus prepared. As to the various uses to which these substances are applied, we shall mention them on the appropriate occasions. Chapter 39. Marrow. Common, too, to all these animals is marrow, a substance which in all cases is possessed of certain emollient, expletive, desiccative, and calorific properties. The most highly esteemed of all is the deer's marrow, the next best being that of the calf, and then that of the goat, both male and female. These substances are prepared before autumn by washing them in a fresh state and drying them in the shade, after which they are passed through a sieve and then strained through linen and put by in earthen pots for keeping in a cool spot. Chapter 40. Gall. But among the substances which are furnished in common by the various animals, it is the gall, we may say, that is the most efficacious of all. The properties of this substance are of a calorific, pungent, resolvent, extractive, and dispersive nature. The gall of the smaller animals is looked upon as the most penetrating, for which reason it is that it is generally considered the most efficacious for the composition of eye salves. Bull's gall is possessed of a remarkable degree of potency, having the effect of imparting a golden tint to the surface of copper even, and to vessels made of other metals. Gall in every case is prepared in the following manner. It is taken fresh, and the orifice of the vesicle in which it is contained being tied fast with a strong linen thread, it is left to steep for half an hour in boiling water, after which it is dried in the shade and then put away for keeping in honey. That of the horse is condemned, being reckoned among the poisons only. Hence it is that the flamen of the sacrifices is not allowed to touch a horse, notwithstanding that it is the custom to immolate one of these animals at the public sacrifices at Rome. Chapter 41. Blood. The blood also of the horse is possessed of certain corrosive properties, and so too is mare's blood, except indeed where the animal has not been covered, it having the effect of cauterizing the margins of ulcers and so enlarging them. Bull's blood, too, taken fresh, is reckoned among the poisons, except indeed at Agira, at which place the priestess of the earth, when about to foretell coming events, takes a draught of bull's blood before she descends into the cavern. So powerful, in fact, is the agency of that sympathy, so generally spoken of, that it may occasionally originate, we find, in feelings of religious awe, or in the peculiar nature of the locality. Drusus, the tribune of the people, drank goat's blood, it is said, it being his object by his pallid looks to suggest that his enemy, Q. Scipio, had given him poison, and so expose him to public hatred. So remarkably powerful is the blood of the he-goat that there is nothing better in existence for sharpening iron implements, the rust produced by this blood giving them a better edge even than a file. Considering, however, that the blood of all animals cannot be reckoned as a remedy in common, will it not be advisable, in preference, to speak of the effects that are produced by that of each kind? Chapter 42. Peculiar remedies derived from various animals and classified according to the maladies. Remedies against the poison of serpents, derived from the stag, the fawn, the ophion, the she-goat, the kid, and the ass. We will therefore classify the various remedies, according to the maladies for which they are respectively used, and first of all, those to which man has recourse for injuries inflicted by serpents. That deer are destructive to these reptiles no one is ignorant, and also of the fact that they drag them from their holes when they find them, and so devour them. And it is not only while alive and breathing that deer are thus fatal to serpents, but even when dead and separated limb from limb. The fumes of their horns, while burning, will drive away serpents, as already stated. But the bones, it is said, of the upper part of a stag's throat, if burnt upon a fire, will bring those reptiles together. Persons may sleep upon a deer's skin in perfect safety, and without any apprehension of attacks by serpents. Its rennet, too, taken with vinegar, is an effectual antidote to the stings of those reptiles. Indeed, if it has been only touched by a person, he will be for that day effectually protected from them. The testes, dried, or the genitals of the male animal, are considered to be very wholesome, taken in wine, and so are the umbles, generally known as the centipelio. Persons having about them a deer's tooth, or who have taken the precaution of rubbing the body with a deer or fawn's marrow, will be sure to repel the attacks of all serpents. But the most effectual remedy of all is thought to be the rennet of a fawn that has been cut from the uterus of the dam, as already mentioned in another place. Deer's blood, burnt upon a fire of lentisk wood with dracontium, cunalago, and alkanet, will attract serpents, they say, while on the other hand, if the blood is removed and perethrum substituted for it, they will take to flight. I find an animal mentioned by Greek writers, smaller than the stag but resembling it in the hair, and to which they give the name of ophion. Sardinia, they say, is the only country that produces it. I am of opinion, however, that it is now extinct, and for that reason I shall not enlarge upon its medicinal properties. As a preservative against the attacks of serpents, the brains and blood of the wild boar are held in high esteem. The liver also, dried and taken in wine with rue, and the fat used with honey and resin. Similar properties are attributed to the liver of the domesticated boar and the outer filaments, and those only of the gall, these last being taken in doses of 4 denarii. The brains also, taken in wine, are equally effectual. The fumes of the burning horns or hair of a she-goat will repel serpents, they say. The ashes, too, of the horns, used either internally or externally, are thought to be an antidote to their poison. A similar effect is attributed to goat's milk, taken with Taminian grapes, to the urine of those animals taken with the squill vinegar, to goat's milk cheese applied with oreganum, and to goat suet used with wax. In addition to all this, as will be seen hereafter, there are 1,000 other remedial properties attributed to this animal, a fact which surprises me all the more, seeing that the goat, it is said, is never free from fever. The wild animals of the same species, which are very numerous, as already stated, have a still greater efficacy attributed to them, but the he-goat has certain properties peculiar to itself, and Democritus attributes properties still more powerful to the animal when it has been the only one yeaned. It is recommended also to apply she-goat's dung, boiled in vinegar, to injuries inflicted by serpents, as also the ashes of fresh dung mixed with wine. As a general rule, persons who find that they are recovering but slowly from injuries inflicted by a serpent will find their health more speedily re-established by frequenting the stalls where goats are kept. Those, however, whose object is a more assured remedy, attach immediately to the wound the paunch of a she-goat killed for the purpose, dung and all. Others again use the flesh of a kid just killed, and fumigate it with the singed hair, the smell of which has the effect of repelling serpents. For stings of serpents, as also for injuries inflicted by the scorpion and shrew mouse, some employ the skin of a goat newly killed, as also the flesh and dung of a horse that has been out at pasture, or a hare's rennet in vinegar. They say, too, that if a person has the body well rubbed with a hare's rennet, he will never receive injury from venomous animals. When a person has been stung by a scorpion, she-goat's dung, boiled with vinegar, is considered a most efficient remedy. In cases, too, where a buprestis has been swallowed, bacon and the broth in which it has been boiled are highly efficacious. Nay, what is even more than this, if a person applies his mouth to an ass's ear and says that he has been stung by a scorpion, the whole of the poison, they say, will immediately pass away from him and be transferred to the animal. All venomous creatures, it is said, are put to flight by a fumigation made by burning an ass's lights. It is considered an excellent plan, too, to fumigate persons, when stung by a scorpion, with the smoke of burnt calf's dung. Chapter 43. Remedies for the bite of the mad dog. Remedies derived from the calf, the he-goat, and various other animals. When a person has been bitten by a mad dog, it is the practice to make an incision round the wound to the quick, and to make the patient take either veal broth or hog's lard, mixed with lime, internally. Some persons recommend a he-goat's liver, and maintain that if it is applied to the wound, the patient will never be attacked with hydrophobia. She-goat's dung, too, is highly spoken of, applied with wine, as also the dung of the badger, cuckoo, and swallow, boiled and taken in drink. For bites inflicted by other animals, dried goat's milk cheese is applied with origanum and taken with the drink, and for injuries caused by the human teeth, boiled beef is applied. Veal, however, is still more efficacious for the purpose, provided it is not removed before the end of 4 days. Chapter 44. Remedies to be adopted against enchantments. The dried muzzle of a wolf, they say, is an effectual preservative against the malpractices of magic, and it is for this reason that it is so common to be seen fastened to the doors of farmhouses. A similar degree of efficacy, it is thought, belongs to the skin of the neck when taken whole from the animal. Indeed, so powerful is the influence of this animal, in addition to what we have already stated, that if a horse only treads in its track, it will be struck with torpor in consequence. Chapter 45. Remedies for poisons. In case where persons have swallowed quicksilver, bacon is the proper remedy to be employed. Poisons are neutralized by taking ass's milk. Henbane, more particularly, mistletoe, hemlock, the flesh of the sea hare, apocarpathon, pharacon, and derysnium, the same too where coagulated milk has been productive of bad effects for the bee stings, or first curdled milk, should be reckoned as nothing short of a poison. We shall have to mention many other uses to which ass's milk is applied, but it should be remembered that in all cases it must be used fresh, or, if not, as new as possible, and warmed, for there is nothing that more speedily loses its virtue. The bones, too, of the ass are pounded and boiled, as an antidote to the poison of the sea hare. The wild ass is possessed of similar properties in every respect, but in a much higher degree. Of the wild horse, the Greek writers have made no mention, it not being a native of their country. We have every reason to believe, however, that it has the same properties as the animal in a tame state, but much more fully developed. Mare's milk effectually neutralizes the venom of the sea hare and all narcotic poisons. Nor had the Greeks any knowledge from experience of the urus and the bison. Although in India the forests are filled with herds of wild oxen, it is only reasonable, however, to conclude that all their medicinal properties must be much more highly developed than in the animal as found among us. It is asserted also that cow's milk is a general counterpoison in the cases above mentioned, more particularly as also where the poison of ephemeron has settled internally, or cantharides have been administered, it acting upon the poison by vomit. Broth, too, made from goat's flesh, neutralizes the effects of cantharides in a similar manner, it is said. To counteract the corrosive poisons which destroy by ulceration, veal or beef suet is resorted to, and in cases where a leech has been swallowed, butter is the usual remedy, with vinegar heated with a red-hot iron. Indeed, butter employed by itself is a good remedy for poisons, for where oil is not to be procured, it is an excellent substitute for it. Used with honey, butter heals injuries inflicted by millipedes. The broth of boiled tripe, it is thought, is an effectual repellent of the above-mentioned poisons, aconite and hemlock more particularly. Veal suet also has a similar repute. Fresh goat's milk cheese is given to persons who have taken mistletoe, and goat's milk itself is a remedy for cantharides. Taken with Taminian grapes, goat's milk is an antidote to the effects of ephemeron. Goat's blood boiled down with the marrow is used as a remedy for the narcotic poisons, and kid's blood for the other poisons. Kid's rennet is administered where persons have taken mistletoe, the juice of the white chameleon or bull's blood, for which last, hare's rennet in vinegar is also used by way of antidote. For injuries inflicted by the pastinica and the stings or bites of all kinds of marine animals, hare's rennet, kid's rennet, or lamb's rennet is taken in doses of 1 drachma in wine. Hare's rennet, too, generally forms an ingredient in the antidotes for poisons. Moth that is seen fluttering about the flame of a lamp is generally reckoned in the number of the noxious substances. Its bad effects are neutralized by the agency of goat's liver. Goat's gall, too, is looked upon as an antidote to venomous preparations from the field weasel, but we will now return to the other remedies, classified according to the various diseases. End of Section 12. Recording by Randall Meredith.